Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. We're on a Wednesday this week. We were going to do it yesterday, but I just got a message from Thorin saying he was back from holiday and he was therefore too wrecked to do a show, which
rare.
is rare, which I approve of it, son. Were you doing anything nice?
Day off is good for you.
No, really. It's just one of those things where too many days. The thing is, if you're in esports, you're obviously used to working on like not much sleep. But when you get too many days like that in a row, eventually you just have to like decompress for a day, don't you? It's when you literally wake up and you just don't want to do something. It's like, fuck that. Because I actually have the obviously like luxury of enjoying my job most days. But if I wake up and I have no energy, it's like, something's going wrong here. I might die. So just take a day off the internet.
No, I feel like that at the moment, actually. Like, I was like, fucking hell, I might take a hard Brexit on doing this today because I've been in the weeds. I'm back doing the journalism thing, aren't I? I'm an idiot. I keep doing it to myself. So I've been up all night poring over all these legal documents for this FaZe stuff, which we'll talk about, you know, because remember, we've alluded to it multiple times on the fucking show that a shitstorm was coming down about FaZe Clan. And it's finally here and it's finally happened. And it was actually the torch paper that sort of set it all off wasn't the domino, to not mix my analogies, the domino that set it all off wasn't the domino I thought it would be. I didn't realize.
Right.
Well, I thought they would resolve stuff with TFU and
I assumed as much as well. Like that was a very weird situation in general. The idea that he isn't fired, he's still in the team, but he's talking mad shit about him more publicly. That is a bit weird.
Oh no, that's Banks. I think you're thinking of, is it?
Oh right.
Yeah.
Right, I see what you mean.
Don't mix your FaZe Clan members and your Clout Gang members. But yeah, we'll get to all of that in a second.
One of those phrases I never wanted to actually hear said in a legitimate context, not unironically towards me.
It's really weird because when I was growing up, clout just meant like vagina.
All right, we like clout you as well, like a hit. I'm gonna clout you. Have you know you heard that?
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard that. I've definitely heard that as I've been being beaten up by a family member. Sure.
Believe it or not, at the time, you don't really worry about the semantics. You just try to avoid physical pain.
Anyway, obviously, this podcast for now is sponsored by Rivalry, and they've been very good to us. Rivalry.com. It's a place you can go and you can place, bets on esports events in a safe, ethical environment. You know, very responsible, fully licensed, doing things the right way. It's why we partnered up. And they do this thing called Thunderdome, which isn't even betting, right? It's all you do is you go on a Rivalry, you pick winners from matches, and if you get, whatever the magic number is correct, like an accumulator, basically, you win money for free. It's completely free to enter. And we've got the latest Thunderdome this week, because they do different ones depending on the events that are going on. It's back to being it's a bit of a mixed bag, but mainly based around the CS Summit, because that's obviously coming up. I guess we can talk a little bit about that later on the show. And the jackpot is $500 if you get the correct number of picks there. And it's going to start in about 17 hours. So you can go over to Rivalry, sign up, get that done, get into the Thunderdome, win $500. It's free money. And another thing to let you all know about today, you probably noticed we got sponsored in the title, #sponsored, where we've got a sponsored spot from ESPN, who obviously make documentaries about sports and esports. We're going to be showing a documentary at the halftime point of the show. It's only 3 minutes, so shout out to them and stick around for that. It's the story of an Overwatch player that overcomes some pretty, difficult odds, difficult situation to basically climb the ladder and hone his skills. So even though, Overwatch, not in my wheelhouse, not a game that I watch a lot of, almost none at all, I would say, we can all appreciate the climb for any esports professional across any esports discipline. So that'll be coming up a little bit later on, and I'll appreciate you sticking around and watching that. So let's get into the big news right at the top of the show. Obviously, this FaZe Clan stuff, it's been a shit show over at FaZe since 2015, and it's been spiraling out of control. And we're not going to talk too much about the Fortnite side of things because, as Duncan has said publicly in the past, it's not an esport. It's not an esport, is it?
I mean, for anyone wondering about that, quick status update. Because remember, I did tell everyone when Fortnite was being lauded as an esport, early last year, because that's about how long the fucking game's been around. But whatever. Yeah. Everyone said it's a future esports. I even said back then, where are the esports tournaments? Well, quick update for everyone. I saw actually one of the sort of like little digital flyers they make for the next big Fortnite event coming up. Don't worry, Marshawn Lynch is playing along with Ninja. So we all know Marshawn Lynch is a top esports professional, right? Not a fucking like actual NFL player who in no context is a professional video game player. So all I'm going to say is I used to make the joke back then. Like, are you telling me Pokemon's a top esports pro? You know what, Pokemon, I'd just like to say to you, while you have accidentally almost dropped a bunch of slurs on stream, and in fact once did, aside from all that shit, I apologise for that. Compared to Marshawn Lynch, you are vaguely an esports professional. Saying that, you're still a fucking pleb streamer. I don't give a fuck about streaming or Fortnite.
So, we won't talk about the Fortnite side.
No, we won't talk.
Yeah, we won't talk about the Fortnite side of things for sure. But what we will talk about, obviously, is how that can impact on the CSGO team.
It's like when we had the whole Optic and Immortals thing. Like, the whole point is, even though the big story sounds like the COD side, it will have massive implications for Counter-Strike, because obviously these are orgs that are also in our game. So, like FaZe, we've literally talked about them almost every episode for last year, because it's all about, do they have money? They're going to buy players. It's a big deal what happens to FaZe, of course.
So if you're a CSGO fan, you weren't following what happened because, as I said, this was all triggered by a Fortnite player looking to leave the organization. Basically, a very popular player, a player who actually, by metrics, if we're going on Twitch, I believe is bigger than Ninja currently at the moment because, we have these cyclical top streamers from time to time. A guy called Tfue. He has been embroiled in an argument with FaZe over elements of his contract.
He's fuming.
Now that's the solid goal.
There we go. Right,
that's
there we
the
go.
solid goal that I
got back the shit crowbarred puns. Right, I was going back in my wheelhouse there. I was getting too political for a while.
Yeah, I know. I was worried about you for a minute there, Duncan. I'm glad. This is what dad jokes. That's what you're here for. Right?
Yeah, it is.
So he certainly was fuming because there was elements of his contract which seem to be very egregious, let's say. For example, FaZe Clan were acting as an agency on his behalf, where they would go out and basically be like, hey, you want to use our influencer for your event, your shindig, your advertising, your marketing, whatever. Here it is. We'll give you access to Tfue. And for every time they brought him a deal like that, in the verbiage of the contract, they could take 80% of the money that was generated from that, and the influencer would get 20. Also, it seems from the way that Tfue's lawyer was wording it, that could apply for any earnings, so even his Twitch channel and everything else. Now, FaZe have since amended those contracts, so now the 20-80 split, the 80 is now in favor of the players, but Tfue never signed one of those new contracts because he wants the fuck out. He doesn't want to be held to those contracts. And the problem that you have is because of the Talent Agency Act in California, you need to have a license if you act as a talent agent for anybody in the entertainment industry, which, according to Tfue's lawyer, that's where Tfue falls under. He's not an athlete. He is an entertainer, an influencer, and that's backed up by the type of.
They're doing my own job for me.
He's been doing for FaZe. Yeah, exactly right.
I don't even argue that they're not a fucking esport. He's the biggest guy, and he's literally legally arguing that he's not even a fucking esports pro. It's over. It's over.
So, I covered a similar case back when Twitch bought Alex Garfield's company, Good Game, which was operating in California and didn't have a license. Basically,
it's probably too small fry back then, though, right? Did they actually get in trouble?
Well, no, you can't. You don't get in trouble for it. It's a misdemeanor, and no one will prosecute. No one's ever for not having a talent agency license. No one's ever been prosecuted under the law because it's a misdemeanor. It's small. It's a waste of everyone's time. But what it does do, 100% of the time, if you didn't have a license and you were found to be acting as a talent agent in the state of California, all the contracts that you negotiated are invalidated.
They're all null. Sure.
Yeah, they're all
for anyone
null.
who doesn't know, by the way, just for reference. when they say that they were getting 80% and the person who they got the deal for got the 20%, I'm not with them anymore, so I'm pretty sure this is not exactly hidden information. I was with a big talent agency myself because the one I was in within esports joined with WME, which is a huge Hollywood talent agency, one of the biggest in the world, and a reasonable split for a company like that. Remember, a massive agency, so they could easily make like the highest thing. Their top end would be about 20% themselves. They would never think about, and by the way, that's because they're the massive one. Like if you wanted a smaller one, you could probably get like a 10% deal if you wanted. So as in the agent brings it to you, they only take 10%, give you 90%. So this actually, even though, again, FaZe claim they never acted on it, just in principle, it is absolutely outrageous. And then also, I don't even understand what was going on in the brain of the FaZe PR person who thought the way to style this out was to just say, yeah, but we never acted on our utterly corrupt contract, and even imply that they hadn't read it because of like, I think that was just added by some old, but like, what is this? That was the maddest part about it, wasn't it? It made them look more incompetent.
Well, I mean, incompetence is the key word, and just to back up what you're saying before we sort of go down into how it can impact on the CSGO team. Same thing. I was represented by WME, IMG as well. They were instrumental in getting me the TV job over at E-League. They played a big part in it, and I think first of all, they didn't even take a percentage for that. So they took an exact 0%. They were just like, we've repped you for a while. We think you're the right person to do this. It's a joint venture between us and Turner Sports, and we want you in the host's chair. So they didn't take a cut of anything, and they negotiated a pretty sweet deal for me going in. But for the rest of the time, for the sponsorships, again, they never took more than 20%. Never. And I can't imagine a world where 80% would ever be reasonable, where that would ever be reasonable.
Especially if you're not at his level. Like at his level, you should be getting the best deal, obviously, yeah.
And that was another thing. I had Devin Nash, him. He used to be called Malixia, worked at Dignitas, worked at CLG. I had him on the stream yesterday, and obviously he's a guy who used to be a CEO of an esports organization, and now he runs a talent agency. And he was like, when they kept talking about how they'd only taken 60,000 from TFU, and that was 20% of of two deals. So that's a $30,000 and a $30,000, which represents 20% of two deals. He's like, if you scale that up and you do the math, those deals are so unbelievably small for someone of TFU stature who's got like 1.6 million Twitter followers, is the biggest Twitch streamer right now.
Put it this way, I've made more than those sums from sponsorship myself, and I'm tiny compared to this guy as an influencer, obviously, and streamer, etc.
Yeah, so basically, there's now an incompetency argument as well, because it's like if your agent doesn't represent you adequately, you certainly, that opens up all sorts of things. So I had a long chat with Devin about it. But anyway, like I say, I won't tunnel in on the TFU stuff. We'll talk about how it can potentially impact the CSGO team. Now, what I thought was interesting was first of all this, like a lot of the CSGO players who've been at FaZe, Carrigan, Exist, I'm not too sure who else.
I can see where you're going on this, because the second they all just spontaneously post a message about how wonderful FaZe is, just like, if you don't know the way, I'll just give everyone a quick hint here. It's like getting blood out of a fucking stone, getting a player to tweet or do any kind of a sponsor thing. So the idea they would just, apropos of nothing, come and tweet that. I could believe one might do it, but it just seems very suspicious. Like the timing of it looks like someone tapped him on the shoulder and told him to do it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the players, because
I could believe they believe it themselves, but like the timing looked very suspicious.
Yeah, it did. I'm gonna go and say here, I don't think they were sort of induced to do it. But I think what you have to understand is that, first of all, FaZe is such a mess internally that the CSGO team, and indeed the whole vision for the CSGO team, has really been compartmentalized away from the rest of the org, because how FaZe's bread and butter isn't esports.
Oh, of course not.
Like, to a much lesser degree, actually, than even Optic. An Optic, if you ever talk to Hex about it, he goes, we're like,
I'm assuming streaming's the main business, right?
Yeah, like we're gaming content first, but we also happen to be good at esports, because obviously Optic have had like the #1 Call of Duty team for a while, you know, like highly decorated. Like FaZe, you know, they again, sorry to use the word clout, but you know what they started moving into was more bringing in like streamers and influencers into this thing called Clout Gang. It's actually a registered trademark, the Clout Gang.
That sounds like some shit you're forced to join, otherwise you die in a prison fight.
No, that's what I said. Yeah, no, innit? Like, you in Clout Gang? You know, like,
you ever have your clout pushed in?
Yeah, fucking sniper from fucking training day. Yeah, absolutely insane, isn't it? That's a thing, and you know, that's got some god awful people attached to it, like Rice Gum and people like
Brilliant.
This. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, like,
I love the way it's just the most unethical scum fucks just circling around.
Well, it's what I was saying. It's like, you know, it's not like this is a company that's like done everything right. You know, let's be real about FaZe. They have been absolute dirtbags for the longest period of time. You know, they had the CSGO Wild stuff where they were all over the fucking skin casinos and having ties to players and all this weird shit. And you know, didn't declare it, and still to this day, some people think they might have owned it and got away with one. Then there was the time they did a crowdfunder for a video game they never fucking made. You know, then in, like I say, in 2015, they got funding, and this is why I was up all night, because I'm going through all these docs for another stream. They had a guy from Norway come in called Sebastian Guertz. And he came in, and he was from a social media app called Hubrick. And he came in and supposedly put money in, and they're involved in a lawsuit against him for misrepresenting. So this is the rest of FaZe are in a lawsuit against the guy who came in and invested and partnered with FaZe for misrepresenting the value of the app and other things besides. And it's like a civil suit where they allege he committed fraud. And when I started Googling, because, you know, I've got access to the court documents, I got all these, like, you know, logins and signups you have for, like, you know, whatever these websites are called. Like, they're in about, there's, like, documentation for about 6 lawsuits for FaZe. It's like it just kept opening up. You've got cross-complaint litigation. So you've got all this stuff. They're involved.
By the way, though, here's the thing. Like, what I think is funny is that people are always surprised when this happens. Like, think about it, right? I always make this point. One of the maddest things is when esports gets big, you should expect corruption by default, because every industry that is not in some way regulated, either internally or externally, always has this. Because think about it, right? If the guy who makes the most money and has the most influence and the most power goes, wait a minute, no one's even watching what I do, what are the odds he's then just going to go further and take all of it? Of course.
Yeah. Well, and for people asking in the chat, saying, you know, are they suing or are they getting sued? Okay, well, the ones that they're suing represent, you know, I mean, again, my opinion here, it seems to me to represent incompetence, because when you look into the Hubrick situation, the Sebastian Guertz guy basically was like going, oh, this app will replace Twitter. Hubrick will replace Twitter, and we'll use FaZe and Clout Gang to push this app onto all of our, like, reach with you as influencers. So not only will we have, like, all these major influencers, all these major esports stars, we'll also have the #1 social media app. Now, who the fuck would buy that line of shit from a guy from Norway? Not me, right? I'd be like, yeah, probably might want to hold off on going all in on this one. So, sure, they're suing him for potentially telling lies. I don't know if he's counterfiled, because there's 99 court documents to go through in that lawsuit alone. I haven't gone through them all. But then you've got stuff like they're involved in a lawsuit where they're being sued by Hilton Media Group for non-payment for all the services.
Hotel or something.
No. The Hilton Media Group is basically like documentary, you know, media company that they sort of employed to help create content, help book stars. Like, apparently they were doing some content with Chris Rock. You know, and Hilton, the Hilton Media Group did all of this, and FaZe just haven't paid them. And I don't know if it's because this money's tied up in all this other shit. I don't know if this money, I don't know if they like legit can't pay. I don't know if they're not liquid. Meanwhile, of course, you know, you've got all this other stuff related to the fucking houses and what's got, like, honestly, like, FaZe just needs to be fucking trimmed with a fucking flamethrower at this point. But the CSGO team, while all of this has been going on, is like completely fucking compartmentalized away from it, because that was actually Sebastian Guertz's fucking brainchild.
Oh, okay.
When he came in, he wanted to say, he was like, we'll get into CSGO, we'll get a good team, we'll spend big, here's the money, we'll sign all the top players.
Fucking Scandinavia was the one who wanted to get a CS, right? That all adds up.
Yeah. So that happened. That happens, and now, you know, I don't think banks even could tell you who the fuck the or any of the other top level FaZe representatives and mouthpieces could tell you who the fuck the CSGO players actually are. It's very distant from everything. So I think all that's actually happened is, in terms of how it impacts on the FaZe guys. I put it this way: I've never seen a video with Guardian shotgunning a fucking beer in one of them houses in like fucking Beverly Hills or whatever, right? Like it's like almost a side project, and I think basically what's happened is they've been told, you know, there's no money at the moment till we square all this shit away. And I've been saying this for ages. Like, they can't go out and sign top level players, because how are you going to drop $500,000 on a fucking buyout when you're not paying a media group over here $30,000 because they, you know, per episode of a podcast they did for you. So I think, but also as well, good luck to anyone trying to decipher the fucking corporate structure of FaZe. Good luck with that, by the way.
What about this then? Because I saw, even though you didn't say it on your stream, that right afterwards, that Devon Nash guy made that comment that people got the little clip of, where he says that this means FaZe will just shut down. Now, from what I've read, that doesn't seem like surely they just changed like the country they're in or something. Surely there's a way.
He
seems unlikely they're going to shut
back,
down, right?
He walked that back a little bit on stream, because
fair enough.
So this is why they potentially will get shut down in California, and it's actually more, I'd probably say right now, it's more likely they do than they don't. So what you've got going on is, in California, right, they've definitely, I can't say definitely, but it's highly unlikely, because I've checked the database myself. I've used all of the names of people who are considered executives at FaZe. I've used FaZe Clan. I've used Clout Gang. I've used all the other fucking parent companies. I can't find a registered talent license in the talent agency database, which anyone can access. So unless they're about to do some fucking great, like, smoke and mirrors move, where they fucking pull out somebody who actually handles all of the talent work and he has a license, I don't know what the fuck. Because it looks very cut and dry in that regard. And remember, this isn't even like a debate. 100% of the time, if you have done this type of work without a license, the contracts get invalidated. The California Talent Agency Act has never been successfully challenged on that basis. Never in its history. But that isn't the big issue. Because this has been going on for a while, despite banks lying and saying, man, this totally came out of left field. My homie blew me up, man. Like, despite saying that shit, right? This has been going on since September 2018. And what Tfue's legal team did, they were like, you know what? Fuck this. We're dropping a dime to the California Labor Commission. Now, this is where it gets fucking scary for FaZe, scary for anyone in California. The complaints that they've given to the California Labor Commission are basically that they didn't, that these people were ostensibly employees. They weren't provided a duty of care. There was underage drinking going on in an employee's house, which is what it would be, what a team house would be considered as. So they weren't protected in that regard. That Tfue incurred injury while working because he injured himself in a skateboard video that now has mysteriously been deleted, despite the fact that Banks came out and said, yeah, you did hurt yourself in that video, but you've hurt yourself in other videos. Like, no.
These people don't go through legal counsel.
No, they don't. They just put a camera on. It's FaZe. They just turn the camera on and talk, and then they go, right, that'll be okay.
They think they're going to style it out in a vlog. That's what I just love about these people. Like the hubris. Imagine how far gone these people are. You know what? A lot of legal problems we've got at the moment. Turn on the webcam. I'll take care of this.
Right.
All right, homie.
So, and then you've got the fact that if they have violated the Talent Agency Act and the contract is deemed to be egregious, plus there was 3 instances prior to now where Tfue supposedly requested money he was owed and didn't get it, which is what triggered the whole thing in the first place, supposedly, if you follow the chronology. The California Labor Commission can just come in and say, well, yeah, this is with what you're doing doesn't comply with the laws we have, which are the most friendly towards the worker in America, and we are now going to issue you. I mean, the sanctions they can issue are insane. So first of all, they can shut the business down outright. Just gone. You can in California.
This is because it's based there, right?
Yes. So they would have to sell their houses in California. They couldn't operate in California. They couldn't have any employees registered or bound by California
Would
law.
your contract not apply in another state, or is it that
Your
contract in California
well,
it just goes?
Well, if it was deemed to be a violation of the Talent Agency Act, which it almost certainly would, because all of the influencers have signed this cookie cutter contract, if they want to walk from FaZe, they probably can. Because if they find that they don't have the licensure and they made these contracts in an improper fashion, all contracts are void. And that actually includes if you're somebody who employed like Tfue or any of the influencers and you owe FaZe money, you ain't got to pay it.
This also just shows how incompetent they are, because like if you're gonna do dodgy shit, everyone in the world knows you just obviously incorporate in like one of those like tax haven places, don't you? You don't make it a massive state in America.
Right. Well. I mean, this is where it gets really funny. You'll like this little tidbit. It's $225 for a talent agency license.
That's so stupid
in California. So just putting that out there.
That is the punchline to the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, but then on top of that, the California Labor Commission can fine you. And to give you an example, Cheesecake Factory, they were deemed to be negligent of several California labor codes in regards to janitorial work, such as the food they served to, and this is the much broader issue, like food they served, shift patterns that they provided. They were deemed to be basically in violation of a duty of care to their employees, and they got fined $4.76 million in June last year. And it's right, and so you're fucked immediately. And the impact, if the California Labor Commission does decide to investigate, it's pending, so there's still a chance none of this happens, is that they could come out and make a determination that team houses for esports teams in California count as offices, effectively. And if you live in one as a player or a fucking streamer or an influencer, then all of these things have to be regulated by the California Labor Code. What food you get, your chefs have to be accredited. There's got to be health and safety on site, working hours. Forget about it. It ends team houses in California if they come in. So
which could be all of esports, basically, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're in
LCS teams and all those are over there.
Absolutely. So the seismic repercussions are huge, and then it gets even worse potentially. I know, you're like, how the fuck can it? One of the things, one of the parts of the complaint is they say that the way esports teams work is anti-competition, anti-competitive.
Okay.
So what that means is California are going to have a long look and be like, these young people signing contracts where your employer, your org, say your sponsors are our sponsors and you can't negotiate your own sponsors and you can't play for anyone else, not even casually, we can veto all of it, which is just standard in esports.
Oh, of course.
This lawyer is saying, no, that's actually anti-competition. And if the California Labor Commission agree with that, there's a chance this could go federal.
What's the difference then? Because obviously if you do some jobs, you're not allowed to moonlight and do others. So what's the distinction here between why this would be not allowed, but that would be allowed in a normal job where you have some level of exclusivity or whatever?
So when you work for somebody in America, they can put limitations in who you work for if it directly competes with their business, stuff where it might take their IP. The business can put some protections in place, but what they can't do is in any way that violates your rights, or operates extraneously to the contract. They can't stop you, say, pursuing a line of work that doesn't directly conflict, or leaving a job, right? Like they can't
or maybe
stop
start a business on the side or something. Sure, right, that makes sense.
So esports. Think about this with esports. Like, what if I want to leave a team? I'm just bound by that contract. And in a lot of esports contracts, I'm bound beyond the parameters of that contract. Like sometimes, even when your contract technically ends, people are still asking for buyouts. It's not like some of them you don't even automatically lapse into free agency. All of this could you can make an argument that it's anti-competitive.
The interesting thing this makes me think about, quick side, just a side observation.
Yeah, jump in.
Those massive companies like Blizzard Software, I think there was one called Riot Games, who like to moralize and tell people, not even just literally what they expect of like a professional, morally judge people based on how they act in the world. And they claim to care about like the environment that their players play within. They apparently didn't give a fuck about any of this stuff though. That apparently was against the law.
But dude, why do you think I've been saying for years that listen, I want I'm going to write an article for this. I'm going to, when I get time, I'm shelving all the other stuff, and I want to just put this out there. I hope the California Labor Commission comes in and takes a fucking flamethrower to it all, because team houses have been diabolical forever.
They're basically just digital sweatshops. Let's be real. They always were.
They always were. Talking as a guy, I'm sure you've been to the ones in South Korea, by the way. Sure, you've seen the ones in South Korea where it was literally fucking 5 guys, burgers and fries in a fucking single bedroom with little string curtains dividing the roll-up floor mattresses. We've all seen that, right? I mean, and then people in America were going, wow, no wonder we can't beat the Koreans. Exactly. Look at that dedication. Fuck that. If that's the price of victory, dude, who the fuck wants to live like that as a professional fucking athlete? And as I said, I didn't see a single team, all the team houses I've been around, visited even for a day, or had players living in them, talking about it, going all the way back to the old StarCraft 2 team houses, which the late, great Total Biscuit said were just fucking glorified frat houses, and he was on point, as he very often was. All of the fucking team houses I saw had like just abominable conditions going on. All of them, right? Like it was either, the food was atrocious, the working hours were atrocious, the supervision was atrocious, people were sharing rooms, there was no fucking privacy, people were fucking, feeding each other fucking pet pills to get through the long practice hours and everything else. So I've seen some unbelievable stuff. So I hope the California Labor Commission deems this to be fucking worth a full investigation. And I hope they torch it to the fucking ground, because the only people who benefit from team houses, hyperbolic statement. In general, 99% of the benefit of team houses goes to the org and no one else. It's a cost-cutting measure. It always was. It was about convenience. It was about managing people. And as I said, the worst part is as well, team house. And then it's like, oh, but the owner uses it as a summer house and cordons off part of it. And you have an entourage as well in there of like, all the other content creators and documentary makers. And you have a chef living there and you have this and you have that. And it's like suddenly these, 6-bedroom houses have like 14, 15 people living in them. And it's a fucking nightmare. It's no way to live. So I'm like absolutely rooting for the California Labor Commission to come in and fucking finally do investigations. And it's great that it's FaZe that's going to fucking take the fall if they do, because no organization has got away with more, still been beloved by their fans, and because of their unbelievable industry pressure that they can apply, where like literally Banks gets in a fucking bar fight at a bar, he records a video of it, fucking basically, giving his skewed version of events. And that bar and the people there, their lives were made a living hell from FaZe fans, giving them negative Yelp reviews, like fucking calling him fake shit to the, absolutely, they've got away with so much for so long that it's like absolutely ridiculous. And no one ever goes up against FaZe because they know that's the type of stuff that's in the pipeline if you do. So, bringing this back to the CSGO thing, I mean, honestly, if the worst does happen and they get embroiled with a long drawn out legal battle with the California Labor Commission, which by the way, none of which will be publicly available, so we won't know if it's happening or not.
Okay.
We'll get access to the civil suits. We won't know. I mean, the California Labor Commission might issue a statement saying that they have their legal term is deemed controversy and they will begin an investigation. But we won't know where that investigation goes, how long it's going on for, what they find. We're not going to get rolling updates like we can from a court case. But I honestly think if that happens, I think they start to shut down extraneous parts of the FaZe business. And I think the CSGO team will absolutely be one of those.
Especially if you look at the condition it's in, it'd be the most logical to cut.
Yeah, I think so.
It's also a game that doesn't make money, so of course.
Yeah, I think... I think Fortnite's huge. You try and retain as many of the Fortnite players and whatnot as you can. They've already started scrubbing videos and stuff. I called it last night on stream. I said the next thing they need to do is go through all of the incriminating videos and get them removed. It doesn't matter anyway, because you would have to present them as part of discovery once the court case goes and nothing's ever deleted off the internet. But you should at least try and be competent. You need to put a gag on Banks as soon as possible, which they've done. I think honestly, like they start making more streamlined content. I think they stop filming every second of every member of FaZe's life and calling it content, because you can't control that shit. I think everything now.
You get someone to check that shit, go through another set of eyes, course. Oh, look, here's the thing: if you're a CS:GO fan, let's just cut to the fucking meat of it, shall we?
Yeah.
Imagine a world in which, obviously it's not going to be tomorrow, but one day, out of nowhere, Nico, probably the second best player in the entire world. And by the way, if you were going to make like prospects for the future that you'd want to sign, he'd be number one, by the way, because Simple remembers from fucking Eastern Europe. Like, he's not super fluent in English. Nico could speak absolutely fluent English. So Nico would be the number one prospect in the whole world of Counter-Strike, and he would be a complete free agent who anyone could sign tomorrow. I could imagine that would be the most insane bidding war Counter-Strike's ever seen. And so.
Yeah, well, so the next point is I don't know enough about the CSGO contracts to know the specifics of what the buyouts look like, whether they just terminate and let people go. Because on the surface, it might make sense to release, I don't know, someone like Guardian, who's like, approaching 30 if he hasn't already turned 30 and married and is very much in the twilight of his CS career right now. Might make sense to release him. Doesn't do a lot of content, right? I mean, you've noticed as well, in terms of content from FaZe, this big content juggernaut, CSGO team does fuck all.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, CSGO does fuck all. Which is, and then you think about how Optic approach it. And as soon, they even had Shazam at those fucking Optic houses, doing content and doing shit. So, so I think there might be a chance that they would release like an Olafmeister. Whether they hold on to Nico because he's potentially $1 million asset, I don't know. So, I mean, Nico could potentially, off the back of this, find, and again, this is all speculation at this point, guys, but he could potentially find himself, like, in a non-functioning team, a team that is downed tools, doesn't attend events anymore, but isn't going to be released because they're going to hold on to his buyout. This all depends on his contract. Now, if the other interesting part is if Nico signed a similar contract to Tfue under the same circumstances with the same conditions in, which would make no sense because I don't think they think of the CS:GO team as influencers. But if they are just doing cookie cutter contracts, probably can walk from it, honestly, because they're claiming to represent you as an agent and don't have an agent license. So, I mean, the whole thing is just beyond a fucking mess. And in typical fashion, what people are focused on is did Tfue betray FaZe because they made him, and and it's like none of this is relevant.
People aren't interested in politics, anything. I've learned this. In fact, there's a lot of people who even follow sports, like esports, just for the drama. Yeah. Here's the thing: you all need to just accept that you want drama and pick a soap opera. It'll give you drama every week. Some of them are even actually well written for what they are. Like, he'll give you that little burst of drama. Because the problem here is, like you're saying here, like, people are missing all these really big, in the context of esports, like social issues, business issues, and it's all about whether or not one guy, was he loyal to his home? He's like, that's a shit storyline, mate. That's not real life.
Yeah, and
why are people like this?
Yeah, well, it's just a sports thing in general. So it's like I don't necessarily blame them for that. What is annoying is that there's people in the industry that really should know better that are like talking about this. But long story short,
I'd even say for those players, even though I get it, yeah, you were treated nicely. Dude, that's always been one of the biggest fucking banes of journalists. Is that what happens is you get a company and some person at the top of the company is a complete scumbags, fucked everyone over. And then the player's like, but I have enjoyed my time here where Billy, the fucking event manager, brought me water. It's like, what's that going to do with this? That would be like some guy going, the guy in the Amazon factory gave us free cookies every morning, so Jeff Bezos must be doing a great job. Like, what's the relevance? It's stupidity, isn't it? I get why they like it, but it's not relevant, is it?
No, and that's what I mean. And like the what's been driving this conversation, like people aren't even looking at the ramifications of how it can impact the industry. Like, everyone's just tunneled in on going like, where will Tfue go next? What does it mean? It's like, guys, the first thing FaZe need to do is let him go. Like, cut him the fuck loose. Say thanks for playing.
Probably even give him a little golden handshake on the way out.
Well,
please stop saying stuff.
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, there's also other things that are potentially coming out. There was an allegation, and it was made by the lawyer. And I looked up this lawyer. He is shit hot. Like, he is unbelievable. Like, Tfue's lawyer for this case is an expert in this very field. It's not like he dabbles in contract law and no. This is his bread and butter. And he said, I want to change the whole industry because these esports teams have been oppressing players and entertainers for too long in the state of California. Like, he wants to make this a career case, and he's got the clout, dare I say, to do it. But people are really like tunneling in on like, where's Tfue going to end up next? They're not looking at the huge ramifications this can have for the industry. They're like just not interested in that. They're interested in how will this affect his like sub count? Will this impact on his popularity? It's like, guys, this can change. If you're a Cloud9 fan incorporated in California, this can impact on them. TSM fan, this can impact on them. You know what I mean?
Can go across all the games.
Yeah, exactly. All the games, all of the games, and it can change contracts. It can change player contracts, how they work for the better. Finally, we could get to a place where players don't have to accept that because I play in Team X, I have to use Mouse X. Like, I don't have to do that. I can go and get my own individual endorsement deals. Finally, there can be this additional value. I mean, you have to understand how backwards esports is in general in comparison to real sports. Because when people sign to a team, we've only just got to a place where actually better players negotiate a higher salary for themselves.
That's pretty recent for people who don't realize that. It's pretty recent.
Yeah, like how it used to work, let's say in 2016. I think that's a fair cutoff point. In general, how it would work is all players had a salary, the same salary.
Basically, Simple back then would have made the same as Edward would, and they would get all the same breakdown of the sponsors, everything. Exactly. They would be treated as if they were literally identical.
Yeah.
While one of is providing insane value, the other one, who knows what the fuck they do.
Yeah. So again, imagine a world where it's like, Simple's making the same as Edward. I mean, that might actually be the world. I'd find it hard to believe, but that we live in now. But that was the norm. That's been the norm for every esport across the board since esports started, and it's only just started to change. And then you add to that, right? Whose face do I want on a fucking mouse box when I want to sell a CS mouse? Do I want Edward? Like, literally with a little fucking quote next to his fucking beardy, weirdy cat weasel head saying fucking, I used to be good 10 years ago. Maybe this mouse will allow you to be a washed up hack. You know, like, or do I want simple? I'm the best motherfucking player in the world. Did it my way. I body people. I've had unreal stats for 2 years. And if you use this mouse, you'll be as good as me. Right? You know what I mean? Like, what do I want? Well, you don't get that choice because Simple can't negotiate his own shit. So, if the California Labor Commission come in and it changes in California, and then it could potentially go American wide, you know, because even if you're one of these teams based in Houston or whatever, you might just want to do best practice and have contracts that are the same as Californian teams' contracts have to have legally, or otherwise you're not competitive.
Yeah.
So it has this, and then once America's doing it that way, well, Europeans love to go to America. Because, first of all, you get to live in America. And then, second of all, you get to play at a diminished level of competition. You generally get more eyeballs because you're playing at times that are tailored to a much bigger audience. You've got more earning potential. You're playing weaker players in general. So, I mean, you know, if you're fucking sign me up to that, all I got to do is get a visa. And then I'm good. So, I mean, seriously, this really could be a potentially big thing for the whole of esports, just not for the fucking reasons that most people are talking about. So, look, before I move on to the next topic, you know, I'll just get some sort of final thoughts from you about where you think it can all mean, what it could all mean for FaZe CSGO, and just that broader context. Because
Sure.
I right now, with the way everything's been going at FaZe anyway, with the fact that they can't be competitive with players for whatever reason that is, and they're bringing in fucking Neo to be an in-game leader, which I think is like one of the most fucking just unambitious roster moves I've ever seen for a top 10 team of like ever. I you know, it's probably not a bad time to think about just cutting the project anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean I definitely agree with you. If you look at the way they've treated the CS:GO team, the last I'd say like year and a half, it was clearly on the back burner. It was clearly not something that was a top priority. As I said, if you look at all the different areas in esports, you can make a lot of money in streaming. You lose a lot of money in the esports games. So like the idea that of all the esports games, the one that right now doesn't even have like a revenue sharing model would be the one you'd keep. Of course not. It would be the first one you would cut. Of course. Yeah. So, yeah, I absolutely, and especially if you add in the part you said that the guy who basically wanted the CSGO team brought in isn't even the guy who's there anymore. They have no real, they have no tie left to that thing. They're not making money from it. It's not the best team. It's not the best for influencers. You can't really even, as you say, they don't even do fucking content. I've always thought CSGO pros, one of the areas they got mad deluded a couple of years ago, is where they wanted to get higher and higher salaries while doing less and less and less and doing none of the extra stuff that every other esports game does. I've never understood that, Richard. Like, people who are League of Legends pros stream as well and like do fucking tweets about sponsors. And these guys don't do anything. So I've always thought those guys needed a serious fucking wake-up call anyway. I definitely agree in terms of the industry-wide thing. Like, in general, obviously, the purist in me just wants to watch the games. So if you can get the best teams there and the best players, on some level, I'm down with that. But that's also when it was the early days and when, you know, applying for visas would have been a nightmare if every player who went and played a few tournaments in America had to do it. So at that point in time, yeah, you could sort of look the other way a little bit. But I will say this as well. One thing that does make me, in a sort of a fucked up way, almost pleasantly anticipate some of these orgs getting either fined or tore up completely, is these cunts also have been moralizing to me and everyone else in the industry for the last fucking 15 years or so, maybe 10 years for most of them. Like, that's the other thing. These are the same people who, because they've just seen what big companies in America do, who also don't believe that shit anyway, but they do the same thing where you can't just present yourself as, I'm a really good company who makes a good product. No, we are good humans who have core values that we represent. Like, you know, when you go with that whole fucking like cult-like speech, like, I know that some people are just doing that cynically, but I detest it so much. I'm always hoping for those people to get exposed in scandals, to have done something literally criminal, just because I hate people who moralize and then aren't living any of that shit in private life. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't do that, is I'll tell people, yeah, I talk shit. So as a result, if someone else talks shit, that's fine. That's the standard you have to hold people to. It'd be bullshit to be like wrecking everyone else for stuff like that if I then myself don't live that life. So just on a personal level, I do always enjoy people like that getting sort of their comeuppance in some way. It's sad in terms of the CSGO team because it's already been in some sort of fucked up stasis for the last year or so. Then they had that whole internal situation where they had to let, well, the best piece is Carrigan go. Well, I get it, but you couldn't replace him. So I have felt like for a while, like, I tell you what, the most depressing thing about the Astralis era for me is it's not that they won everything and no one could beat them. It's that the two best players in the world couldn't get functional teams around them to at least go head to head with them. Like, if Astralis had just straight up beaten Na'Vi when they had all good players, then it wouldn't matter that Simple was the best. That would even be an even sicker accomplishment. But as long as there are those flaws in those teams, it's just depressing to watch. So I hope it can all be resolved soon. But by what I've heard and everything I've read so far, it all sounds like the right people are going to get fucked, basically.
Yeah, and like you say, long time coming, and it'll be interesting to see how there's like an industry correction off the back of this. Now, of course, this could be another one of those near misses for everyone in esports. As I said, this has been an issue since 2015. Nobody picked it up then when I was writing about it in 2015. And if the California Labor Commissioner, like, honestly, we can't be asked. Because, it sounds like we're going to have
It's
to...
a bit like the Visa one. Because, the Visa one, they had a few chances recently where that looked like it was going to come to a head and everyone was going to get wrecked. But as you're saying, they sometimes just back off. Like, they realise we're not going to tear the whole thing up. So it depends how determined they are, right? Yeah.
And when we find out one way or the other, we'll have a much better idea about where this can go. We might be... it might be saying, oh, the sky is falling, and actually the California Labor Commission might not give, two fucks and nothing comes off the back of it. But I still think there'll be a slight industry correction because you can't fend off the American government forever.
Sure.
It's like I tell you, it's a matter of time. If you're a streamer and you're not filing a 1040, or if you're a player and you come out here and you're playing on tourist visas, like was going on in LCS all the time and making money, it's a matter of time before Uncle Sam's coming. You don't want the IRS.
I will say it is mad how many pro players I've known who've had years they didn't submit taxes. That is. I even used to tell them back in the day, this is so short-sighted because what you're not realizing is taxes don't go away, mate. Like, if this ever gets big, you better be out now. Like, you better not pay it now, but then you've got a year left. Like, if you're planning to do this long-term, you are just like, basically, you're like building the noose for yourself at that point in time.
Well, I've tried to explain to people as well because they think, if you're a foreign import, people don't realize the powers the IRS has out here.
It seize all your shit as well.
Yeah, they just seize your assets. They're just all up in your fucking shit, like a proctologist. They can fucking garnish your salary if you make one.
Exactly. They can go directly to your employer and take the money without you even having to give it to them.
Yeah, like... And I've tried explaining this to people. It's not like in the UK. But it's like I had a tax bill, right? Like in the UK, and while I was living out here, and it was just such a low priority to fucking pay it. And they would be like, look, Mr. Lewis, the Queen wants her money, and if you don't pay, we'll put some more interest onto the principal. Like, suck my fucking nuts. You'll get it when I'm ready. Fuck you and fuck the Queen. Right? You know what I mean? But like out here, I'd never say fuck the IRS. That's like fucking suicide. You know what I mean? Like, but I dragged it out for as long as I could. It's all settled now.
Luckily, the IRS, well, our equivalent in the UK, also doesn't roll up with a SWAT team if necessary. Like, it's never going to go to that level, is it?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. They just got because they just don't have any power. IRS audit all your shit. One misplaced fucking decimal point can be cataclysmic. And people have been flirting with this shit for a while. Esports has basically enjoyed all the luxuries of being non-regulated and operating in the shadows for way too long. Well, guys, you're the evangelicals telling us all the money's here now and it's legit and all the VC groups are in. Why don't you want to do shit properly now? Surely we can afford it, right? I mean...
It's almost like they had no margins left to squeeze, Rich? The other thing as well is this. This is also another great example of how esports is not anywhere near as big as they say it is. Because you know what? There are other industries, some of you can probably think of now, that get away with some of this stuff. Not all of it, but some of it, or like half they get away with it. That's because those industries are so huge. They can afford fucking bribes and stuff. They can pay the right lobbyists. They can donate to the right foundation that gets the right governor or senator on your side. That, you know, like esports isn't at that level yet. I said this about the visas. If it really was as big as they make, they would have had that shit sorted years ago. Like they would have got some special dispensation or whatever the fuck. Like it's another one of those areas where this is like one of those moments where someone in the fucking Wizard of Oz pulls back the little curtain and you see just a little guy, don't you? Like, what the fuck? That's all esports was, just some wizened old cunt with a face hat on, like, what up, homie? He's like, I'm no one, look away. Like, it's the way the guy's name's called fucking Banks as well. Would you look at that? He's all torn apart by the IRS, hasn't he? The Labour Board.
Riding dirty.
It was that meme was actually a prophecy sent from the future.
But yeah, it's just wild. We got some interesting times ahead as the industry gets whipped into shape, and it's been a long time coming. And I'm glad. Hopefully, it's gonna go to people who don't fuck around, so we can stop making excuses for poor player conditions, stop making excuses for cost-cutting exercises, and start actually giving players these supposedly elite level athletes that I read an article every day by a fucking publication that knows nothing about esports telling me, did you know you can make $50,000 an hour streaming again? Yeah, you can, but like none, one or two people, like 10 people.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sick of hearing about how esports playing video games. Yeah, that cunt makes it kicking a ball around. What's your fucking point? Like, I have to read these dumb articles every day about how fucking legit we are. Right. Meanwhile, those fucking journalists, like, they don't realize how not fucking legit we are. Like, there's no player unions. Players don't have a great time in this industry by and large. If you think mainstream sports is cruel, esports undoubtedly crueler.
That is the maddest thing, isn't it? Every article in the past was like, it's not a real sport. Sir, they've added 2 zeros to the numbers. It's the most real sport of the entire future human race.
Mate, I saw a comment the other day. I can't even remember the name of the cunt who fucking said it, but like some important person who made millions, and he was doing one of them talks on one of those many panels where it's like, we won't get anyone who actually understands the lay of the land or the industry to come and talk about esports. We'll get a millionaire from another fucking business to come and talk about other esports. So who the fuck was it now? Ted Leonsis.
Oh, I remember this. It was the guy who owns the Washington Capitals, I think.
Yeah,
was
the guy who owns the Washington Capitals, like, said,
and I think he invested in Team Liquid as well. Or some shit, right?
So he said two things. He said in 5 years, he said in just 5 years, Team Liquid has become worth more than he paid for the Capitals. That might well be true with current valuations, although
that's also not a great thing to say publicly, because what he's inadvertently actually dropped himself in on there is the fucking NHL isn't doing very well, you dumb cunt. Like, that's not like if I own Coca-Cola and I say that, that's sick, isn't it? If I own a fucking dying sport with a bad franchise, well, I mean, that is a good franchise. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the sport anyone wants to buy into. Like, he's inadvertently wrecking himself there, the idiot.
Yeah. And then he went on to say that in 10 years, he thinks an NBA 2K League player will be better known and better paid than LeBron James is today. And
by the way,
like,
if I had to guess,
buddy,
if you count all endorsements and salary, I would guess LeBron James is making like 50 million or more a year.
Yeah.
There's not a single person in esports is making that.
Like, in their lives.
Like I doubt even like any of the owners of any of those teams, no one's even close to that. No one's even close to that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is the NBA 2K League won't be around in 10 years.
And also, he hasn't even picked like a big game. He's picked one that hasn't even made it yet. That's the maddest part, isn't it? Because remember, he didn't say an esports. By the way, that'd be a mad statement if he even said an esports player will make that. He's saying one in the NBA 2K League, which is ostensibly propped up just by being involved with the NBA, another dying sport. It's like, is this real life?
Well, so what'll... Like, the idea that a derivative product from the main product can be bigger than the product itself.
It's isn't it?
That, I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe there's something I'm missing here. But the idea, it's like, okay, so what you're telling me is the future LeBron James is, like, reamed out and he's just there miserable playing basketball. But the guy who plays as him on a video game, of which there will be multiple people, is making more bank than him running up and down the fucking court
in this
all
guy's
day.
world, are you ready? In this guy's world, some guy who's like comes from the fucking ghetto. He's been playing basketball every day, is 1-on-1. You know, he's had to play in some dangerous circumstances. You know, some thugs came on the playgrounds, but he's the one who's going to make it to the NBA, so he kept doing it anyway. You know, he went through the hard times, and then his parents like, of course, we wanted him to just go the easy route and become an NBA 2K player, but he wasn't good enough at the game. He just couldn't hack that lifestyle.
Yeah, so that's like the stories we're going to get apparently according to this guy. Like, you know, in 10 years, there's going to be a documentary about going, you know, like, I tried so hard, man. I tried so hard to be an NBA 2K player, but because of my injuries, I had to just join the NBA. You know what I mean? Like, fucking put down the pipe. Put down the fucking pipe. Like, it's just outrageous, isn't it? Like, and again, these people are taken fucking seriously, dude. Like, I call it Cuban's law, right? I'm going to popularize this phrase because the absolute shite that Mark Cuban talks about esports, and everyone just goes, oh my God, it's Mark Cuban. He's like a billionaire and he has like cameos and things because he's like cool and look at all the things he says and look at all the philanthropy he does. And he was in like fucking Dragon's Den or Shark Tank or whatever the fuck they call it. You know, like, he doesn't, yeah, but he thinks League of Legends is esports. He like keeps talking about, yeah, we got a burnout problem in the industry, man. Like, people are washed up at 24. Yeah, in your game, in the one game you vaguely know something about. Tell that to the FGC, 45-year-old motherfuckers like smoking people and winning fucking tournaments, like Taz, like still, you know, out there doing it. Like, we ain't got a burnout problem in CSGO. Why is that? I wonder if we look at the structure. Oh yeah, it's all that fucking franchising, burn our players out, let's fucking endless content mills, force them to stream, milk them from every penny, you know, for every penny process that's going on in League. Weird how you're not critical about that. But anyway, whatever. As long as he gets his little moment from adoring fans. You know, it's Cuban's law.
It's funny he's never called anyone out for that. If you know that there's all this burnout and all these problems in the industry, go ahead and pop a few names out there. Give me one of the devs. I mean, you're not involved with anyone. You're the perfect guy to call it out. To be a hero. Tell me what dev isn't running their game, right? Tell me a team that abuses their players. Maybe even drop a player, if you know the name of one, who's burned out. Any of this information would be interesting. Also, would be the first thing he'd say if you actually knew anything about the fucking topic, obviously. Yeah.
But, you know, he did say fuck once during IEM San Jose. So.
He said it twice, mate.
Oh, did he? My bad.
He said it again.
What a legend. So yeah, just nonsense. Right, let's talk about Team Liquid and their lifeline to Cologne that we've had. One of the things that you've been talking about, you know, a lot is how the Blast series has impacted negatively on the entire circuit. I didn't realize it was as bad as it was because you'd put a tweet out today where it's like the only. So this is right. The only event we've had the top 5 CSGO teams in.
Big LAN.
The only big LAN where we've had the top 5 CSGO teams was the major itself in 2019, and we're almost in June. That's like insane.
Because that's the point people never got. This is why it's almost like they didn't do this intentionally, but it's almost like the genius of the whole Blast thing was that initially we only all looked into it because of Astralis. So unfortunately, a lot of people can't get past only talking about the Astralis part of it. But the point is this. Yes, the Astralis part where they own Astralis and do the influence of Astralis is obviously interesting and it's its own topic. But the point is they don't own Na'Vi. They don't own Team Liquid. So how are they getting Na'Vi and Team Liquid to, of their own accord, not attend massive events, which it would be very much within the fucking interest of Na'Vi and Team Liquid to attend, not least because they could overtake fucking Astralis, the team that Blast and Refresh own. Refresh technically only own. Blast is a company obviously of Refresh. So the point is, that's the part where, again, by the way, full credits to Blast. You are so fucking stupid. You gave us this information. We didn't even have this info, you dumb fucks. Like, I didn't even realize how you were doing soft exclusivity until you had the stupid hubris to say all they have to do is play 5 out of 7. Well, since only 6 teams can attend a Blast event, or logically, all of your teams couldn't attend every event, could they? Therefore, you're actually, the 5 out of 7 isn't a good thing for the rest of the industry. That's how you control the rest of the fucking circuit, because you make sure that when you do the 5 of 7, well, Obviously, if you really wanted to be lovely to ESL, you'd make all of the top 5 teams go to all the same 5 events. Oh, but you didn't, did you? Because you want to control the whole industry, you daft shits. So what you did is you had one where it was like Nip and Cloud9 and Finette Astralis, and then you have another where it's Na'Vi and Team Liquid and not Astralis. And in doing so, no other event in the whole year except the major. And then I can't remember if technically iBuyPower Masters, a smaller event, I did, but it's not a massive event anyway.
No,
you make it so that no one else could ever have like the top 4 teams in the world. Cleverly done, until you revealed it all like some dumbass Bond villain before you got away with it, you shithead.
Yeah, no, I mean,
mad, isn't it?
It's ridiculous.
And like I say, I had no clue that any of this would go this deep. They actually stupidly, in trying to sort of like, they did that classic thing, Richard. Like, if you're in a hole, stop digging. They just kept digging, and now they're in fucking China.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I was the same as you. I had no idea. Like when this was, I was like, everyone who comes into the industry makes a little bit of money, gets a little bit of attention, gets a little bit of love from the community. They all then immediately jump to fucking being, trying to be a fucking Bond villain. They all immediately go there. ESL have done it on multiple occasions because they've been in the industry long enough. DreamHack have had a go. Like fucking ESEA have had a go. Like everyone has a go. Like MLG. Right, go with the Halo shit and going head to head with fucking DreamHack and pay-per-view. Like even the companies I respect, they all have this moment where they're like, right, we've been doing great work. The community love us. The teams love us. The players love us. We're doing great events. We're getting nothing but positive press. Shall we be evil now and just try and run the whole fucking industry? And everyone in the room goes, yeah, that sounds great, actually. And maybe one person puts out because, but we could just keep building on this, and then eventually we'll just have fans and control the industry because people just like us. And that. No, absolutely.
They throw him out the window like that.
Yeah, exactly. That fucking meme. Get out, you fucking idiot. So yeah, it's wild to me that we're here, but not surprised because this is like my millionth campaign of this nature. But where it does get interesting is the fact that when you look at the hard data, the 2019 circuit has been absolutely ruined just by the existence of the Blast and the way that they conduct their business.
If you are just a fan of the game, forget everything else. If you are just a fan of the game, the 2019 is the fucking season 8 Game of Thrones of CSGO. Like, I'm not joking. 2013, when there was like no sponsors and all the events were small, they didn't have these problems. We still got the top teams at all the events, etc. Like, this fucking sucks. This is whack.
Yeah, you got it in there for the search engine optimization as well. I like that. In there for the YouTube algorithm. So we might get a few.
Because, by the way, a side topic, a very brief thing I can mention is that's actually also an interesting detail. Because I see some people keep making this like, okay, maybe fuck Blast, but like, shouldn't we hate all the teams as well? It's like, that's what you don't know. Because every fan does this constantly. You'd think from the first hour of the show, they'd understand this isn't the case. Every fan makes out like, well, if you sign a contract, you're the bloody idiot. It's like, do you know the concept of legalese is that you can't understand it? You have to literally go to school for like 8 years and fucking do like 14-hour days to get because it's like a different language, you idiot. It looks like English. That's the trick. That's not a bug. That is the feature that they rely upon to mean that I can't just go and represent myself and win the case because I'll definitely lose to anyone who has an understanding of legalese. So when people sign these contracts, first of all, they don't know everything.
Not to mention the absolute contempt the judge will have you if you even try and represent yourself.
Of course. Exactly. Like anyone who thinks like movie shit like that's going to work. It doesn't. You're going to get completely
My cousin Vinny is not how it works. Yeah.
But here's the other detail that I didn't myself know again because like, by the way, the other side to this that is legit hilarious is every time I think, right, well, down tools, I finished that story, some idiot at Refresh or Blast says something else new that makes me go, well, now he's just hinted at something inadvertently that makes the story even deeper. Back in we go, and then I dig a bit more, and there's another few skeletons under there. So another angle I found as well, Richard, was, you know what? All the teams aren't loving this, by the way. I know I said none of them came out publicly and said anything. I've had people from teams tell me, actually, you know what? Some of the stuff with the circuit this year is exactly what you're talking about. The whole point is we didn't know what 5 events of the 7 we would be getting. So actually, we were waiting on some of them when other orgs were asking us, can you do our event? And then the whole thing is, that's why it's actually cleverly done. It's not cleverly done because they've exposed it now inadvertently. It was cleverly done before because this is another clever way they did it, is by assigning you what Blast you're going to. They don't tell you not to go to the tournament that's a week after or 3 days before, but it just incentivizes you not to. It makes it less likely you will. So what's clever is they don't even have to have explicitly told these teams, don't do this because we're trying to control the. Of course they wouldn't. But they did everything else that, like, basically it's like fucking channeling a river somewhere, you know. You don't make the river flow that way, but you can direct its course, can't you? Of course.
Yeah. So anyway, Team Liquid looked to be one of the teams that weren't going to be able to attend ESL 1
They
Cologne.
weren't. Let's be real. Anyone doesn't realize, if you know the way those invites work, like a team like Team Liquid, their invite would be in like the first 5 or 6, definitely.
Yeah.
There'd no way that'd be the last one. So the fact that there was one invite left and they didn't get it, and then I had already heard through a source they weren't going, meant that they absolutely weren't. So let's just get that clear. It's not that like it's been revealed I was just jumped the gun. No, they weren't. That's why they've now announced, and they basically admitted, if you can read between the lines of the fucking statement, that they weren't going to go to ESL Cologne. That's why they themselves have to go through a qualifier while a shit team like Big just comes to the event. Like, if anyone thinks the industry works like they were like, oh, we forgot. It's like the writers forgot about Team Liquid when they were making the invites. Like, no, obviously this actually proves that I was right.
Yeah, I mean, so they weren't going. Anyway, one of the Team Liquid managers, a guy called Joker Steve, not to be confused with Steve Arnset, he's a different Steve who works over at Team Liquid, so he's not the big boss, but he's been at Team Liquid for a long time, and has been through various iterations of the CSGO team and other teams. He put a statement out today basically saying they've been thrown what is effectively a lifeline. So there's something called the GG Bet Cologne Invitational, where the winner, and only the winner, will get a direct invitation to ESL 1 Cologne. Now, I don't know if that was always the case. I don't know where this GG Bet Cologne came from, how it, like, who's partnered up to make this happen.
From the news, it looks as though it was announced very recently. Like, I saw someone was complaining about the fact that there's one for Cologne, a spot, and then one for Chicago or something as well. There's like 2 qualifiers they're going to run. So I assume it's like a last minute thing generally. Like, they just get the deal together for the last spot or something.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder because, I recently interviewed Ocelot for Deserto, and we talked a lot about the CSGO team. I was very surprised that it didn't make it to Reddit, actually, because there was a lot of interesting information there about, why they potentially weren't going to be at ESL 1 Cologne. He said, we're still working on some stuff behind the scenes. Now, it makes me wonder if a lot of the people who were kind of frozen out of going to ESL 1 Cologne for whatever reasons maybe we're trying to do a little bit of leverage and get like another qualifier from somewhere.
Oh, it seems, by the way, earlier in the year they did a GG Bet tournament. It was the one that Na'Vi famously lost and Heroic won. Apparently that also did the same thing. That qualified Heroic to Sydney. That was no, wait, I'm talking about a different one actually. Maybe this was like an online tournament. I'm thinking a different one, but apparently there was an online one that Heroic got through. So it wasn't the Na'Vi one that I did the wrong tournament there.
Yeah, so I don't know if this was always planned, but it does seem weird that when G2 had all that nonsense because Nell went out and said, oh yeah, they're not going because Shox is getting married, and like everyone was like, nah, it's absolute garbage. Like Shox would be at ESL 1 Cologne on his fucking wedding day. Sure. Like, so I don't know where you're pulling that from.
I will say, by the way, that's an example right there as a journalist of where you have overstepped your bounds, sir. You have taken the fact that Shox is getting married and literally just assumed that that's why they weren't going to the tournament. I'm just going to go ahead and say, I realize I'm sort of doing what he did. I'm going to go ahead and guess you didn't have 2 completely independent verified sources who told you G2 is not going to ESL Cologne for this reason. You just assumed that. And that's one thing you shouldn't do as a journalist. Or if you do it as a journalist, be very clear that you are speculating. That is just your opinion, which is not what he did. He did it like in a definitive manner as well. Like, he had all the shit squared away, didn't he?
Yeah, and don't worry, incels. I am talking about Shox, the French CS player, and not Shox, the esports host who does League of Legends primarily, but has recently done CS events. So don't cry in the chat about that, please. But yeah, so G2 weren't going, and Ocelot told me, we're working on something behind the scenes, so I can't say too much. And then League of Legends, Team Liquid were 100% out. And obviously they had their League of Legends team doing all of this stuff. It looked like it wasn't even going to be a big deal, for them. Management didn't say anything. They were focused on MSI. There was no statements. Seems to me you make all the controversy go away by just saying, oh, don't worry, there's a qualifier coming up. And we'll be there. We'll be playing in it. And that's that. No controversy, no drama. People don't tunnel in on how the Blast are ruining ESL One Cologne. People don't tunnel in on whether or not teams are being greedy by turning down ESL One Cologne to participate in Blast events. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it seems to me, it seems to be very strange that this wasn't announced a lot sooner by the teams, and it makes me wonder if it was kind of created at the last minute.
Thorin's died at the moment, yeah.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
I thought he was just holding in a fart.
Oh, there we go. We've had zoomed in, Richard. Oh, it's a nice zoom this time, to be fair. At least it's still on your face. Perfect zoom. You ain't even gonna fix it, mate. That's perfect zoom.
I need to get some fucking Just for Men for beards is what I need, mate.
I think Thorin's internet's gone. But I was going to say, it's not like the first time there's been a weird qualification. And when VP just went out of Pro League and suddenly there was just hundreds of opportunities to get back in.
Yeah, and that's happened a few times for big teams, right? Like, I want to say it wasn't just VP that's happened to. But, it does seem to be like one of those weird situations where, you end up basically like... I mean, because it benefits all parties, obviously. Like, first of all, GG Bet having a qualifier, it benefits it benefits them, because it's great teams are playing in our qualifier, and it gets eyeballs on our brand and people signing up to use the service. So they benefit. The teams obviously benefit because I think they want to play at ESL One Cologne. It's just like, when you commit to the Blast because they're giving you financial inducements to do it, you basically fuck yourself over from playing at certain big tournaments, because players can only play at so many tournaments a year. We've worked the player break in, but that doesn't mean you get to fucking just beast mode them and send them to every other event when they're not on a break. I mean, that's unreasonable. And players will not be happy with that. And then obviously ESL One benefits because you think they're happy about not having a team like Team Liquid there. That's absurd, of course. So look, I'll read this statement while I wait for Duncan to come back. So if you can bring it up, do you want me to link it to you?
Yeah, drop me a link in Discord.
There it is. I like as well how you Dunk, you're dead, by the way.
Just letting you know.
Probably a violation of Discord's TOS right there. So just a heads up for that. But anyway, so the statement from Joker Steve says, we'll get some lubrication for this. After much consideration and thanks to a changing schedule for us this year, I'm happy to announce we will be attending the GG Bet Cologne Invitational, which will award an invitation to ESL One Cologne for the winner. We understand that this announcement comes quite late, and we would like to apologize to fans who may be affected by our delayed notice of attendance. In this post, I also want to give some context as to our decision-making process and the things we keep in mind when we're lining up events for the year. I'll skip to the end. Appearance fees. That's if they don't mention this in the rest of the statement, you be lying. One of our priorities as a team this year is to manage our playing schedule better in order to avoid burnout and mental fatigue. As much as we value stage experience, we attempted the strategy of accepting the majority of invitations that came our way last year, and it came at a significant cost. First, last year's schedule left us constantly fatigued and emotionally drained. Being able to come home, reset ourselves, and have lives outside of the tournament circuit has been a real boost to our team's mental state and morale. Really shows in all those finals and semi-finals. Joking. Second, last year's grueling schedule, I'm going to repeat that phrase so it enters your brain, left us with no time to study and revise our strategies, which meant that we had no choice but to reuse the same strats between tournaments. This is not how professional Counter-Strike should be played, and it affected the quality of our performances. We're proud of our improved recent performance, and it's a result of our more mindful approach to Counter-Strike's continually evolving meta. Our best chance to win is to enter each tournament with a ready mind and a ready playbook. When we looked at our current commitments and traveling schedule, attending ESL One Cologne would have meant an extra 2 weeks in Europe, more time on the road, and less time to train to revisit any strategies. And this is like a piss week.
Mate, ESL Cologne is the one, but what event you go into if you're not going to Cologne, but what else? That's it, but...
Yeah, I mean...
Outside of majors, but what else are you playing for other than Cologne? Like?
No. Pretty piss week. That sounds like Dunk's returning, so that's good.
Oh, there we go.
So
there we go.
He's back in the game.
I was getting all these packets from somewhere like Denmark or something. It was weird. Anyway, whatever. On the other IP now, so,
Good.
Catch me if you can.
Right, yeah. Don't tempt fate. So anyway, I'll finish reading. I'm just reading the Joker Steve statement. Basically, the line you've just missed, which is where he's like saying, we looked at our current commitments and traveling schedule. Attending ESL One Cologne would have meant an extra 2 weeks in Europe, more time on the road, and less time to train or to revisit any strategies. And I just said that's a pretty piss weak excuse, in my opinion. Then he says, if we are,
especially because this is another thing, right? Let's make this point very quickly. One of the things people keep doing, and I assumed, by the way, when fans did it, they were just idiots. Like, I believe it or not, by the way, when I call you idiots, I'm actually forgiving you for that. I'm basically saying you are not able to comprehend the thing. I'm like Jesus on the fucking cross, like, they know not what they do, Father, forgive them. Like, except I would never let myself get crucified. So anyway, aside from that,
casual comparison to Jesus.
You say I am merely Jesus.
Of course, immediately. So anyway, the point I want to make is this. One of the tricks people do, because one of the things that's great, right, is when you can't win an argument with real points, you immediately just go to fucking sophistry, and what you try and do is you make something sound correct. So the best trick you do is the same trick Astralis and all their fans did. What they do is this, Richard. Yeah, but what about the events we did go to? You mean the small blast events that I don't count as equal? Like, you make all events sound equal. So, like, that comments make sense there, right? That, like, well, we're going to this event and we're going to this event, and how can we go to a third event? Except that third event is, like, the third biggest event of the entire year. So that immediately makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I know why he's saying it. He's obviously actually saying they're trying to go there now. But the point is, it doesn't sound cool that you went to a small blast event and then missed the biggest event, does it? Like, those aren't equal. Those are no way equal. You would have priorities. And plus, it's ESL 1 Cologne. We all know when fucking ESL 1 Cologne is held every single year. It's on the same basic week, like every year, as far as I can tell. Like, it's not like that's a surprise, going in. Go ahead and put it in your calendar for next year. ESL Cologne, probably in early July, right? Like, this is one of the biggest events of the year. The idea that you would be like, I never knew that ESL 1 Cologne was coming up. I've already scheduled all those smaller events. So that's like the angle that I'm never going to buy that angle from anyone in the industry. Come on.
Well, as well, it's like Sam was saying before you reconnected. It's like, what else are you playing for? Like ESL 1 Cologne in the majors, right? So what? An extra 2 weeks in Europe where you don't get to revise your playbook. I mean, come the fuck on. Like,
I'm going to do a video on this topic because I found the ultimate comparison that's going to wreck all these cunts. Because you know what's mad? This might sound weird from that earlier thing there.
Are you doing this from on the cross, or are you coming down and going to the cave?
This is just a normal mere mortal.
This is our duplicate spread.
Exactly. So the mad thing about it is I actually don't even accept the premise that esports games burn you out. I don't think that's even real. Like, I actually think the things that burn you out are things like emotional stress, like being away from your family, having in a team house. Because I thought of this the other day. One of my favorite sports is tennis. You know that the top tennis players go to like fucking 20 tournaments all around the world in like every continent. And sometimes a tournament's a week after like 2 weeks after the other one. And the whole point is, if one's you have to do it to maintain your ranking. Imagine that, Astralis. Imagine that, having to play to maintain your ranking. Not just have a religious feeling in your fans' hearts that you're just the best without any current evidence with that. But anyway, like, it's actually mad if you think about it. Like, in CS, these guys are complaining about playing a best of 5. In tennis, you play a physically draining best of 5 sets final, and every other match is a best of 5. Like, at the end of the tournament, you might have done the equivalent of running like fucking 50 kilometers or something. And these guys sit at a computer and like, the stress, if I have to do this more than once a month, I can't do it. It's like, I'm sick of this whole premise. Like, what's mad is you idiots have now pushed me that I'm going to expose that you're all a bunch of fucking little bitches, basically.
Good.
No, I edited that. No, I might have gone ham. Whatever.
You made me do this.
I've started editing myself now.
Timestamp.
My own brain was like, timestamp that beforehand. Right, take
I'm on board with that. You need to timestamp the other stuff. You've got the process correct. It's the application that's wrong. But anyway, so Joker Steve continues. If we are to attend every tournament as scheduled, we would be on the road for 2 consecutive months without a break, living out of our suitcases and hopping from one tournament to the next. First, we have CS Summit in LA. Don't go to that then. Just a thought, but okay, you've agreed to go, so fine. And I like CS Summit. I'm not saying don't go to that, but they've adopted a format that's
it's clearly a much smaller event than fucking ESL 1 Cologne. Like, here's the thing: I get that it's in California. That might be a good reason if you're Team Liquid.
Yeah.
But definitely not as big as ESL 1 Cologne, is it?
Then DreamHack Dallas immediately after that, right?
Okay.
So,
all right, event.
Yeah. Ooh, like what's that? A 3-hour, 40-minute flight in business class? Nightmare.
Like, these shouldn't even count as like that's like part of the stretch. Should it come on?
Then he adds, should we qualify for ECS? We then need to fly to London for the event and stay in Europe to boot camp in Malta for ESL Pro League finals in Montpellier a week later. ESL 1 Cologne would be our final tournament in Europe before returning to the US for Blast LA, should we be invited. And I think, you know what? Invited, IEM Chicago.
Shout out to Jocker Steve, because one, he's actually an all right guy in real life. I've met him a few times. And he is also a guy.
He's a sound guy, yeah.
You know, he's also someone who isn't caught up in all the bullshit. Like, this is a public statement. But actually, since I've done this a few times before, I need to make that series I've often been threatening to do, which is basically I just take everyone else's press releases and I tell you what they really say. So another example of an absolutely bullshit
translates, it could be called.
Basically, another example of a bullshit attempt at sophistry that he just did there was where he somehow implied that because his team, who hasn't yet qualified to ECS, could qualify to ECS, a less important tournament than ESL and Cologne, that would make it logical to decline an invite, a guaranteed invite to ESL 1 Cologne, one of the biggest events of the year. Now, that will never make any sense. Never.
And
it's in Europe as well.
But it does
CPL's in Europe.
Yeah, but it does make sense if you know about the whole ECS business and how it was set up.
Of course.
The initial seed funding by Twitch.
But he doesn't mention that. Like, you know, by the way, you know the bad thing?
They have to do it because they're joint owners in the league, right?
If they just came out and said that, I'd respect it. Yeah. If they just said we have a deal with them, but instead they do this again. They try and make everything sound like it's just a bunch of events.
I'll just say this as well. Like people need to just hear me when I'm saying this. Team Liquid want appearance fees to go to tournaments. I don't know if this applies universally. Certainly is applied to some like smaller tournaments at the past where there's like nothing in it inherently for the teams.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's something that's come up somewhere along the line. But the recurring theme you'll see here is there's like some sort of like financial inducement, or it's like down the road. Like they have to go to ECS. Because the Team Liquid is like a co-owner in the league, effectively. You have to go to ESL Pro League because, you know, you're in fucking Weiser or whatever fucking umbrella organization they're running this week from fucking Fringueli's offices. Like, you know, these are the things. And then why wouldn't you go to American events? But the problem that you've got fundamentally is you're talking about, well, we've got these commitments that we have to go to because we've got business relationships with these leagues. And should we qualify for the LAN finals, we have to attend. Well, okay. You know, first of all, I understand you have to plan for that, but it's still a should. And then it's like, and then we come back for the Blast LA. And should we be invited to IEM Chicago? Well, should we be invited? I mean, that's a big thing. Like, how do you turn down one of the biggest events in the calendar for all these shoulds and then try and lay it out as a perfect justification for why you're not going? And then,
meanwhile, every team that doesn't get invited, it's like, where's my invite? Why are I invited to 15 events per year?
Yeah. And then he goes, on the other hand, if we do not qualify for ECS and do not attend ESL 1 Cologne, that would result in significant downtime and missed opportunities. Plus, it would mean sacrificing the opportunity to play at one of our favorite tournaments for limited return. I'm guessing he's trying to refer to ESL 1 Cologne there. Again, completely disingenuous bullshit, because if it's one of your fucking favorite tournaments, you prioritize it over any one of these lesser tournaments. I mean, so it's just nonsense. It's just fan service because they don't want to have to carry the can for basically devaluing the tournament. With our qualification for ECS finals still uncertain, we reassessed our plans for the upcoming 2 months and decided to take the risk and accept our invitation to the Cologne Invitational. We would like to thank everyone from our fans to ESL for being patient with us as we try to find the right balance between competing, preparing, and resting. Finally, we would like to make it clear that we do not take tournament invitations for granted. We appreciate every opportunity to play in the biggest tournaments in the world, especially in storied venues like Cologne. However, the reality of being a professional player includes time management, prioritization, and of course, sacrifices. The next 2 months will be exhausting, but we hope to come home with a couple of new trophies in our suitcases. Well, here's the thing. It's a qualifier, so I don't even know why you're talking about it, because you'll get to the final and shit the bed. So it's fucking academic, honestly. It'll be hilarious.
Also how you know that they obviously turned down the invite, because the other thing is, why would he say that whole thing about how they still respect the tournament? And then secondly, no one in their right motherfucking mind wants to go through qualifiers in 2019. As you go and look at like ECS now, motherfuckers like a Vanguard who at the LAN you'd beat, they're going to knock you out online, mate. They roll up and just take over those qualifiers. Like no one wants to play through those.
Yeah. So I think this statement is like just, again, total fan service, trying to make out that like, oh, we've got this like 2 months on the road living out of suitcases. Yeah, we've just put 2 player breaks into the average year, by the way, that weren't there in previous years. You're also attending tournaments in America primarily, including CS Summit, which, let's be fucking real, if that's not a holiday, like, I don't know what is.
Of course.
And again, the specter that's over this is how many of these tournaments are you going to because you're effectively being paid to go, or because you have a business relationship that generates money for you and you're sending the players for that. So let's not pretend that it's all about player rights and our players need this and they need all this time off and because if it was, sacrifice one of the ones where you're getting a fucking appearance fee. Prove it. Prove it's about players and not about your pocket. You won't, because it ain't. But overall, it's still good for ESL 1 Cologne. I mean, the fact that G2 are going to be in it. I haven't even seen, is there a list of teams in this yet?
Oh, nearly all of them announced. So,
yeah,
you mean the qualifier, right?
Yeah.
I actually couldn't see the qualifier anywhere.
Yeah, have they announced the qualifier yet? I'll have a look.
Like, I couldn't see it on
literally the only announced teams are Liquid and G2. And so there's 6 more teams to be announced, and obviously that's taking place on June 13th to June 17th. So, going to be very interesting. I'm trying to think if there's any other notable absentees that could get invites to that qualifier. Is there anyone you can think of?
Let me double check who isn't at the event. Let's have a look here. Because the thing is, remember, this is the one that cleverly Astralis revealed. Oh, they are going to be at this event. We don't make people skip events. We just made the other teams. Fuck you. Absolutely fuck you into the ground.
No, that is outrageous as well, isn't it?
So like almost everyone else seems like they're there as far as I can tell. Let me see. There's no NIP actually. NIP, it doesn't appear to be going to it.
Oh, okay. Well,
sorry, I'm wrong. Actually, NIP is there. No, I think everyone's there. Let me think. I can't see anyone here who's missing egregiously. Like I'm guessing if you did the top 10, most of it's here.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I think, like I'm trying to think of the other teams that could get fucking invited. I mean,
there's even Vitality's there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think, who else could there even be? I mean, you'd have to go with smaller teams. It'd have to be like the Vanguards of the world, wouldn't it? Gambits, the smaller teams, although they're apparently on like suspension now or something, some dumb shit. So I don't think there's many teams left. Cloud9 isn't there, I guess, but I assume they're just skipping it.
Well, maybe not, right? I mean, Cloud9 could get an invite. That would add some value to this qualifier. Mouse Sports, maybe.
Mouse is on there. They're already in at the KSL in Cologne.
They're already in Cologne. Fuck, dude. Crazy. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, the key thing is like in terms of adding like value to the overall tournament, like provided it is Team Liquid getting the fucking soft invite, basically, because like based on what we'll talk about now, DreamHack Tour, like G2 aren't going to be a threat. So if all the teams are below that caliber, Team Liquid should do it. But then again, we're talking about fucking Team Liquid.
Speaking of which, by the way, can we just go ahead and throw this in there as well? There's another piece of fucking sophistry I'm not going to accept from these teams, where you try to slide under the guise of this really, grueling tournament circuit, like tournaments that are in your fucking home country and like someone where you live in the city. Like that doesn't count as you being
the idea
that
out, the idea that you're driving down the road to play in CS Summit where people sit around on fucking
you get the advantage when you go to that tournament.
Like sitting around on sofas, fucking drinking
they don't even have a stage set up there. There's no pressure whatsoever.
I know. It's mad, isn't it? Like it's mad that that's being deemed as like, I'm on the road. You're not on the road, are you? For that week, that's definitely not an issue. But anyway, so look, let's talk about DreamHack Tour, which was the sort of event that was on while we were in between episodes, and there was a few interesting stories that came out of this.
Sure.
I watched this tournament. I watched the VODs. Vince was working it, Dust was working it. Like friends of mine, guys that I know. So wanted to fucking just check it out, see how that new casting partnership was coming along and everything else. Let's talk about just some of the stuff that's been going on in terms of Ghost, because I don't feel like we've talked about Ghost gaming for a while right now. They had a pretty tough time of it, and they don't feel like they were that great upset team that they were a while ago. So I mean, they had this issue initially, like when they went there, they didn't have their full team because
Freakazoid, yeah.
Freakazoid couldn't go. But I also kind of feel there's been like a lot of weird shit going on over there, and they had that whole issue where Steel was in,
Yes.
and then Steel was Steel was in, Steel was out, Steel's back in. People were like trying to mediate and mitigate like internal conflict, and Ghost were a solid fucking upset potential team that were like tactically sound and with young players that could like
Sure.
really fucking go off in the games. And unfortunately, here they weren't able to overcome G2 in the one best of three that they got to play. Went out in groups. Like the player they did have was that what's he called? Like
It's the
James.
coach.
Yeah, it's the coach. Like James.
He's a guy who, if you saw, I
IRL.
think he did like some casting of like EPL a few seasons back for like the NA
Yeah.
side or something. So he's been around a little bit.
Yeah, but it is obviously a massive impact to your numbers, but I mean, just overall, like talking about it in a broader context, it does kind of feel like Ghost has had a little bit of a drop off, and this move where it was like Steel, I think, was trying to bring in like almost like an enforcer, like we've seen before in Cloud9, where you bring somebody in who's like a big personality, overwhelmingly positive, to try and create a culture change within the team. It hasn't really worked out for them.
No.
The way that I think Steel would have hoped. And then when you have additional problems like this, like he's unable to travel, unable to attend events. And you go to events like this, like Ghost should be having a deep run at this tournament. I think if they have all their players there. I mean, let's be clear. Like some of the teams that were actually at this event, you've got like you say, you got a French team called Instinct, who whatever. You got French Frogs was another team that was there. I mean, like Instinct is basically like, if you thought like the Existence team was fucking bad for washed up players, this is the one that has like fucking
Sure.
Devil.
These
like,
are all the never word.
Matens, yeah, Twanu, yeah, the people that were all like
Exactly.
touted, yeah. So I mean, like fuck that. And then and then like French Frogs were there, like just all this other stuff. So. Pretty ridiculous that Ghost weren't able to get a deep run here, even with the circumstances. But as I said, they did have a bit of a problem in the fact that they came up against G2, who was certainly well drilled going into this. So just your
that's
thoughts
one
about
of the
Ghost
things.
overall.
Oh, right, Ghost.
Yeah.
Right, well, first of all, yes, obviously not having the full lineup is going to affect the team. Like you were saying, I kind of saw the Freakazoid move. It made a lot of sense to me. Like, if I'm thinking from Steel's perspective, first of all, I've already seen what this guy did under Sean Gares, where he was like the fucking in-game leader's dream as an entry fragger. Yeah, he wasn't super sick as a player, but he did his job completely and without question. Like, that type of a player, very difficult to find. And simultaneously, here's the other thing. Often that type of a player, the guy that just do their job, don't complain, that's the quiet guy. The idea you get that guy, and it's the guy who's like the energy guy, the positivity rolled into one. It's why Freakazoid, actually, I don't care if his aim doesn't look sick. He actually has a lot of qualities he brings to the game that aren't just about shooting people in the head. And so, bearing in mind, we all know in a Counter-Strike team, everyone doesn't have to be super sick skill-wise. Actually, he's a pretty valuable player at this sort of level at Ghost at. So, looked like a good move to me when he was brought in. Sadly, obviously can't use him. One of the problems I think Ghost has is a lot of their big tournaments last year where they had the big upsets was that they did have one really good player, which is Wardell. And obviously he was the guy we were all looking at like, holy fuck, this guy should be in Cloud9. He should be on one of these teams, And I have to say...
Well, famously turned them down, he said,
yes,
didn't he?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I have to say he has regressed a little bit. Or he's just, maybe they were just a few tournaments he was just going super well and he's leveled out or something. But he hasn't been like as sick as he was, basically, because a lot of the times, like he had to be sick and then Steel had to call a great game and then it'd be a close win. So like they already were sort of like, they had pretty thin margins to get those wins over the big established teams. As you say though, fair fucks that they even came close here with not even a real team.
Yeah, I mean, able to take him out off G2, who we'll talk about in a bit, with the coach stand-in, definitely admirable. I'm sure Steel's going to be like massively disappointed that the situation arose. Because like I say, I know when Steel goes into these tournaments, he sets the goal of winning tournaments of this size. Like, undoubtedly, that's the standard he holds himself.
Also, wouldn't even be impossible to win a tournament like this if you had the real lineup. Of course not.
No, definitely not. And, I think, I think like maybe... Neptune was probably like a standout when I watched the G2 game. His development's been interesting. But yeah, I just feel that while I don't want to judge him too harshly or using a coach as a stand-in, I think just overall, like there's a little bit of that spark that they had, a little bit of that hype that they had that's like missing right now, and they definitely need to get that back if they don't want it to become this sort of like forgotten opportunity of the NA scene. We'll talk about G2. Again, when I did my interview with Ocelot for Deserto, there was this, period we were talking about the CSGO team, and basically Carlos said that with the team he's got now, with Jax in it and Lucky in it and Amanek in it, he talked a lot about culture and how this team is enjoying playing and everyone gets on, and a lot of the dark clouds that were kind of over the team, that were over the team back when they had this supposedly all-star lineup, was basically gone. They were rejuvenated. They were super looking forward to every event, and they felt they could do great things. Well, look, let's be real. This tournament, I think, was a bit disastrous for them, and they might want to reevaluate just how far you can get with the fucking power of friendship and anime, because they lost. Sure, best of ones, we all know that shit, but they lost to French Frogs in the opening game, and I think they had a considerable lead on Nuke at one point, and then just shit the bed totally in overtime. They started hemorrhaging rounds in both halves, despite the fact that it looked like G2 were going to close it out. And that was like insane to me, but that's fine. This shit happens on day one. You go out and course correct it. As I said, they beat Ghost, right? But then like they lose to Valiance. Now, sure, Valiants are another one of these teams that have like very underrated players. What's interesting is, as that team has developed and evolved, Esperanto, who we remember was the difficult diva going back to the Imperial, but it was, in his mind justified because he was like the top player. I would say he's not even the best player on this team right now. I think like Nexa is fucking off, like he's just out of this world in terms of what he does for Valiance, and this is a player who, of course, was like rejected by Renegades. You've obviously got Nico's cousin there with Hunter, who was like constantly improving and getting better and having these like standout rounds. And this other guy that they brought in, who I'd never even heard of, that like Letney or Let N1 or whatever you want to call it. He's been a very solid pickup as well. So you've got this like kind of I think they're Serbian, is it? A
bunch of them, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think Hunter, Nexa, and Letney are all Serbian. So you've got this Serbian core, which is actually the best thing about this Valiance team. Now, all of that being said, if you're telling me a team with Shocks and Kenny S was going to lose to a fucking team in a best of three with a Serbian core, again, even like 6 months ago, I'd be telling you were out of your motherfucking mind. And this is like
in their home country, no less.
Yeah, exactly, like in front of home fans. So, I mean, this to me, like the nature of the defeats, the overall level of performances, they had 2 overtime bottles. Like, they lost it on Dust 2 in overtime to basically go out of the tournament. Like, not making the final of DreamHack Tour is a massive setback, I think, for G2. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. That's the problem with this event, is I'll give you what the G2 version of sophistry for this would be like. Well, in the end, we were only one map away from the final. If we make the final, who knows? It's like, no, with the talent here at this tournament, you have to be in the final. There's not even a question about that. In fact, bear in mind, Mouse only just made their team like, what, a month and a half ago, 2 months. You should even win this tournament, because there's the problem. This is where, for people like Ocelot, they don't realize, while they're able to make a stupid fan, this is what, in general, this applies to everything that I've said that's PR related on this episode. The PR works on the stupid person. To the intelligent person, you just dig your own grave. So here's how you dug your own grave here, Ocelot. Because I agree, a lot of the things he's saying sound brilliant. They're what I'd want an owner to say. And in other games, League of Legends is an amazing example right now because they've just won essentially a world championship in a game that Koreans fucking dominated. So you know what? Some of that does come from culture. Like what he did in League of Legends was he recruited really, really well. He got all these amazing talents, and then he created this system in which you had to work hard and you had to play, but you got a lot of freedom, and you had a lot of say in how you expressed your play and how you express your personality on Twitter. And he gave you the perks of being a world-class player, basically. And as a result, he was cleverly able to not make it so you were like, he was a slave master, but at the same time, get you to feel incentivized to work, and they became the best team in League of Legends. The problem he has in CSGO is he doesn't have any of the best players. Yes, on paper, KennyS and Shox could be one day again. They were once. They aren't now, though. That's the key thing. So being as he doesn't have any of the best players, the only thing going for his team, which he correctly, as you said, he did an interview with me maybe 6 months ago similarly, that he correctly was able to like brag about, is this isn't like other French teams. This team actually has broken that cursed culture. They are practicing, they have a coach, they listen to the coach, they have tried out many different roles now, they've brought in new talent to specifically play roles of what they thought they needed. They've done all these things, and ever since the major, remember back at the major, he was bragging about how wonderful their practice was and how proud of them he was. So that means essentially the core of this team, they've changed a couple of players obviously, the core of this team though has been playing and practicing hard, properly, like top pros in top conditions with none of those bullshit excuses that French teams had for the better part of like a year, 6 months now. We're talking like 5-6 months at least. And these are the results at your home event without top teams there. Your story is we almost beat the team that didn't even win the tournament. Like that's a whack story. You see what I mean? Like when you actually add up all the stuff he says, it makes it worse. So the problem is, it's like that. It's like what I used to say about Neo when he was in Virtus Pro. Because I know he practiced and reviewed VODs and looked at his own game and did it. If he then is ultra shit and posts a 0.4k PR for like 5 tournaments, then I know he's garbage. Like, at least some other player. Like, when I wreck Zeus, half the reason I wreck Zeus is if I know he doesn't do the work. If he actually just was perma shit, I'd say he should be removed. But I wouldn't, like, make fun of him 24/7. Like, it'd be tragic, wouldn't it? So that's actually the thing that's depressing me about this team, is it's actually a great point for me in that whole thing of, like, if you're an Astralis, dietitian, or exercise guy, stay in your fucking lane and shut up talking like you make your team win all the tournaments. Because this G2 team is doing everything right, and they're worse than the Vitality team that has all the old stars that they rejected, essentially. Because guess what? There's a guy in the Vitality team actually bangs everyone out by shooting them in the head in the video game. And that, guess what, Astralis, is what makes you win Counter-Strike. Like, that really is ultimate. Yeah, there's a lot of other things, but it will. You have to have the other things and that. If you don't do it in the game, it is worthless. Like, I don't care that you were the nicest guy ever and you had the greatest practice ever and that you followed all the tactics and that you listened to the sports psychologist and you didn't cause any trouble. And what did you do at the end? Didn't come close to winning. Then who gives a fuck? Just get someone else in. Like, I'm done with this whole G2 project at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the fundamental problem, honestly, was like it made sense when it was the French super team because that hadn't really been tried before. You know, we never got the KennyS, the Shox. We never got MBK and Shox to put aside their differences and give it a go. It was a disaster and massively underperformed. And it's like
looks like bloody the promised land compared to this, like, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course, sure.
That's the depressing thing, isn't it?
But again, you know, the time for the fucking culture change was with that roster.
Exactly. That's what you should have done.
That's the missed opportunity.
Exactly. What you should have done is brought in the people and the mindset change with that lineup and worked to change it.
Yeah. Because, you know, again, when we talk about lineups, like what could have been, like, you know.
That's a massive what if team. I mean, they already did win 2 massive tournaments and then bomb basically half the others, didn't they? So, like, of course it's a what if.
You know, and you look at all the little components where it's like, you know, Smiths as a coach to placate Shox and, you know, like people's roles and you know, little arguments and all these little things.
I believe that was another team as well where, I won't completely speak out of school, but I believe that was also one of the teams where they might have been bringing girlfriends to events and stupid shit like that distracts you. Like, So there was a lot of problems in that team, which that's why I say the problem with this whole scenario is I have to give Ocelot props. That is actually amazing that he broke the French culture and got people like Kenny S and Shocks to play like proper pros. The problem is he did it when they're at their worst. And I have to say, this is the spoiler, Ocelot. I think that's the only reason they let you do it, mate, because they don't want to be fired and have no salary anymore. Like, I don't think they really bought into that. Like, if they did, it's because they're at the bottom. When they were at the top, that's why they didn't have to do that, because they were so good they could command basically respect, even when sometimes they didn't deserve it for their behavior.
Yeah, and meanwhile, again, it's like there's players out there that could easily replace some of these players on this roster. Again, what the fuck's Kiyashima doing right now? If you really have got this cultural change going on, just improve the overall quality of your players. Like, again, I almost feel bad saying it because, honestly, I don't think Jax has been as poor as I thought he was going to be.
Oh, he's actually been all right. He seems like he does his job.
Yeah.
He's just not a world-class player.
Yeah, and at 26, I don't think he is ever going to be, but, again, I feel a little bit bad being so critical because, Ocelot's telling me how much he's, like, loving it, and
yes.
Yeah,
that's the problem. It's like I have this
like a big deal for him. Like Jax is like 100% nailed on, trying his absolute balls out hardest because he understands what an opportunity it is. And I always have respect for players that do that. But in terms of what he's delivering on the server, like, is he ever going to be a top level player? He probably isn't, and that's just the reality,
I always tell people this because I sometimes have, believe it or not every pro just comes at you publicly on Twitter and calls you a cunt or whatever. Like, I have pros who often will come in a DM and they'll basically say like, oh, I see you criticize this player on my team, but he does a lot for our squad and this and that. What I always tell them is this. I tell them, I don't actually care who are nice guys and who aren't. I'm judging Counter-Strike here. So I tell them this. I only want to hear that story when it's a player on a winning team that people say should be cut. So, for example, if Ents does really well and everyone's like, cut the X7 guy, but then the players say, well, actually, he does something very important. Now I'll go, I'll take a second look at that. If you're on a losing team and you tell me, yeah, but he does all this stuff, it's like, who gives a shit? At the end of the day, the number one most important thing in Counter-Strike is winning Counter-Strike games. That is it. Like, every other factor only matters if you are also winning Counter-Strike games. Like, that will always be the defining factor.
Yeah. So, what happens here? I don't know. I don't know if the culture change is going to be enough for this team, like get another few events under their belt. Obviously, we're going to wait and see how they perform in the CSL 1 qualifier, right? Because if they make it to the final and let's say beat a Team Liquid to go to Cologne, then fair enough. You're gonna ride that out and see how they do at the big tournament. But I mean, if they flop in that, at what point do you say, we're G2. We're doing so well in all these other areas. And I know Carlos is like, it's not just about reach for him and it's not just about exposure. He actually does want trophies in the cabinet. So...
Well, he's got some problems there because he's got 2 French events and hasn't made the fucking final.
Well,
what do you want? At this point, Ocelot, hold the tournament in your fucking bedroom, mate, and only invite G2 and some fucking kid from the local park. You might win. If that culture's all really good, unless he actually turns out it's Zewu, so then he just fucking 1v5s your whole team. What a shame. Wah, wah, wah.
I appreciate the sound effect.
I know, innit?
So anyway,
by the way, I think Ocelot's a G. I love him, mate. But
oh yeah, same. I love.
This is just one of those ones where it's like the sad thing about it is because he's killing it in all other areas of the esports scene. I want to believe that he's just cracked it. He's the ultimate owner, but in this one area in CSGO, nothing you're doing is working. Even though some of the things you're doing in theory are good.
His problem was picking French.
He's fallen in love with Shocks as well, you can tell. I mean, we all do, mate. But you have to be able to get over that when it's not working.
You have to understand how much of a legend fucking Shocks is.
Of course.
And now, I've known him for fucking so long, and he's such a cool guy, just a great guy to hang out
He even
with.
is a guy where this is the maddest thing about him is he's one of those people who is so charismatic that if you were talking to him, you do forgive him for not practicing it, don't I? But it's like once you get out, once you leave his fucking reality distortion field, you go, that's kind of fucked up that he's not even playing it. Once you become sober again in that sense.
Like one day, if we're ever being candid and everyone's comfortable with it, the stories about Shocks will just blow everyone's mind.
Oh, of course.
Because he is just such a fucking legend.
He basically, here's the thing. Obviously, this is hyperbolic. Don't take this as literal. But he essentially is the George Best. Of CSGO. Like, all the best
I'm not even sure
that's
hyperbolic.
It's not in some ways, but all the best. Well, I'm assuming he hasn't had his liver replaced and then just wrecked the next. I'm sure it wasn't that bad, Richard. But
yeah, probably hasn't had that yet.
Although he did
have a hand surgery.
Yeah, he did have to go get that hand surgery and take a few months off.
Old Georgie too lives
sweating it out.
Power it, swap it out.
Yeah. But yeah, like just such a super cool guy, and it's like you say, you know, he's everything you want because you want him to be successful. Because he's like got that rock and roll fucking aura around him. He doesn't play by the prescribed rules, and he can turn up and dominate with actually little effort. Like
he's absurdly talented as a player.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like when you hear the fucking stories about like Mike Tyson with a fucking 40-second knockout,
exactly.
and the night before he was up all night doing fucking rails and smashing hookers and everything else, and then he went in a ring and he just destroyed a professional athlete who works incredibly hard because he was just the greatest boxer of all time. And it's just like it's sad when you see players like that come to tournaments like this and under deliver. You know, you want them to do well, and as an owner, obviously you're going to be you've got more reason to want it than anybody else. You deal with this guy on a day-to-day basis. You have all these great interactions, so I do get it, but there will have to come a point where they've really got to be ruthless with this team. And I think just picking the French scene, I think the French scene's fucked. I think it just ain't shit now. And you look how like the Swedes are getting their shit together, and like we were just talking about 6 months ago, like what the fuck is up with the Swedish scene? And then all the old boys have been like, yeah, actually, fuck this. I'm not having Disco Doppler stealing my checks. It's time to grind. And Fnatic are back, and NIP are having a much better run of form. So,
the most depressing thing about the French scene is this. It's not even like it's just publicly they have to pretend like there's all these issues. That even privately, none of these people particularly want to play together. Like, none of them want Scream or Kiyashima. Obviously, NBK and the other players don't want to play in G2. G2 players don't particularly think Vitality, like nobody, like even if you actually could free all the contracts, I bet you they wouldn't make an amazing super team tomorrow, sadly. I think it's in a bad space right now.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, like, again, I know this can't happen for reasons, but if we're changing culture, like, give Keo a fucking gig in this G2.
You're also a bad enough team. It's just worth the gamble. It's worth the gamble, I'm telling you.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk about mouse sports because while we're talking about cultural changes and people who build successful teams. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to get carried away with the hype like I've seen like some people on Reddit were like posting, oh my God, mouse sports have won this tier 2 tournament. They're looking so scary. Like, let's fucking dial that down right away. But the reality is, like you say, you're G2, you've had the benefit of like having this lineup for a longer period of time. You're the home team, but fucking mouse sports have swooped in and fucking won it and done it in real good fashion. I'll earmark some of your tweets about it, where you pointed out rightly things we've said on the podcast before. Like Rops looks like a fucking totally different player, and it's like one of the things we accurately predicted. We said, if there's a player in a slump of form, a crisis of confidence, and you get Carrigan as an IGL, watch that motherfucker go. Because this guy, I don't know what he's got, but he's like the player whisperer. It's fucking
mad,
mental.
isn't it?
It is mental how he turns around players in bad dips of form over and over and over again. And this is where you start to realize the power, the potency of a good in-game leader who is a people person and can manage people's on an emotional level as well as a tactical level. And, MSL isn't the player whisperer. MSL doesn't come in when you're having a dip of form and knows what to say to unlock the fucking Hellraiser box in your mind that's like condemning you to the hell of playing shit. MSL don't do that. He just tells you have to stop playing shit and listen to me, and that's it. And if you can't do it, you just cut. And sometimes even if you're the best player and you're not listening, you cut. And that's just how it rolls. Carrigan will make you a better player if you listen to him and you open yourselves up.
And also, the other thing is, compared to a lot of other people, Carrigan also has the respect factor. Because here's the thing. Maybe Nico doesn't think Carrigan's good enough. Because Nico's like almost the best player in the world. Like, you can only imply you wouldn't want to play for Carrigan if you're in like the top 3 team in the world right now. Like anyone else, he's above your level, mate. Like, he's taken a step down to play with you. This guy's been in a major final. He's been winning massive. At the end of the day, you can just go, if anyone ever disrespects Carrigan, just tell him this one fact. He beat Fnatic, what was called the greatest team in history, during their prime, almost every time he ever played them in a series. That's the fucking level this guy was on.
He had fucking
mental, isn't it?
on toast, like, and like you say, the fucking...
That's got to be the most gangster stat of all time. Who can fuck with that?
Yeah, he's unreal. He's unreal, and people don't realize it. And it's a shame that it's his good qualities that are very often his downfall in terms of, you know, like when the Danes got rid of him, when FaZe got rid of him, because there is an element when you're the man of the people, and not an authoritarian. Well, why the fuck do I have to listen to you now that my ego's up? Now that we are winning, now that we've hit that first slump, and it's like I say, the idea, it still blows my mind that there was like ever a conversation where it's like, yeah, Carrigan's the problem in FaZe. Like, fuck me. Like,
I know. Especially because I always said this, as you just waxed lyrical about. If we were, bearing in mind, clearly more than one player needed to change that team anyway. If you were going to have to bring another player in, I mean, I'd even say, God forbid, you thought about your financial situation where maybe you can't buy the best players. Who else the fuck could make this team better with new players? He's literally the most obvious person to do it, isn't it? I even look at FaZe now sometimes. This is how mad it gets. And every now and then I'll think, who could they get? And then part of my brain does go, what about that Carrigan? I have to remember, oh, wait, he was in FaZe. Forget about that, actually.
and remember, you know, even though he's a veteran player and he did play 1.6 and everything, he wasn't an in-game leader back then.
Sure.
That the absolute insanity about Carrigan as an in-game leader is he learnt being an in-game leader while playing in CSGO on the mouse sports team with Gob B in it. He like basically took notes from him, and when he moved into doing it later on, so he's like a latecomer to IGL, and he's got this shit cracked. Like it is berserk how fucking smart he is and how good he is. But you know, the other benefits here is the core of this mouse sports team. The questions we had: could Rops get back to form? Carrigan's fixed that problem. Could Frozen develop and prove that he can play at this level? Because it ain't your fucking FPL pugs, it ain't your pickup games, it ain't your scrims. This is on LAN, spotlight in your face, and you're still a fucking teenager. Turns out, Frozen can absolutely do that. Legit talent, and in the best place to learn and be nurtured by an in-game leader who does it habitually. Then the other question, what type of Woxic is going to come to this team? And so far, pretty consistent, right? Like not a hit and miss player that we've seen in the past. Guy, you know, getting it done with the ops, capable of winning rounds and taking it over by himself. And then the other question you have is Chris J, who was in and out the team, all of that handled terribly, in my opinion, by the organization. Was Chris J going to be able to relinquish his prior control of the team and how important he is to the team and deal with a new in-game leader coming in, probably with a new system, new ideas, and a completely new lineup with the exception of Rops for Chris J to play with? Was he going to be the good soldier yet again for Mouse Sports? The answer is yes. So all the big question marks I had about this team in terms of how the players could work together have all been answered in a positive fashion. So now the only question you've got is, where is the limit? How good can they get over the next 3 months? And winning tier 2 tournaments already? I mean, fuck. This team really does have some potential. And very excited to see where it goes, although that excitement is tempered by the reality. I don't think they're ready to mix it up with the top 5 yet, not by a long chalk.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a bit like the whole thing with Ziwu as an individual player. All these great signs, the whole trajectory's looking brilliant. You're hitting all the initial like check marks, but there's a reason why the top players are considered the best in the world. It's not that they had one good tournament or 2 good tournaments or they got one nice placing and then had one that went. No, yeah, it's consistency and it's the body of work. So yeah, the key thing is he has absolutely lived up to his reputation. As you just basically described there, pretty much every player in the team's in form. And some of them above expectations. Like, for example, as you said, if you looked at Rops, the way he was going off at the end of last year, you'd have thought, yeah, actually, he's just ended up being an okay player, hasn't he? He's not going to be a star. He's looking now like if they actually get to the big tournaments, this is a guy who one day could be like a top X player in the world. He could be on one of them lists. Woxic, obviously a very talented player, but he was on a team where people pretty much felt like he just got to do whatever he wanted and he was just a one-man carry. So sometimes those players don't transition that well to a proper team. Looks like he's doing great. frozen. I would have even given him another year. I would have said I wouldn't even judge you harshly. A bit like when Rops first came in the team.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll give this guy some time. I'm not going to go super hard on him. He's already online. He's already basically where you'd want him to be as a mega young player with no experience. And so the idea, like, all of this is a coincidence. No, it's so clearly, yes, I don't want to take anything away from the players. They did the play. They put in the hard work. But the idea that a guy's come into what was a dysfunctional team, they've made a new roster, and it's immediately hitting all the check marks you'd want is so positive for the future. And if you look at the initial lands they've had, they haven't really put many feet wrong.
And in the other component we had is, like, would Carrigan have wanted to work with some of the other players that Mouse Sports had ties to? Would he have wanted an Oscar in there? Would he have wanted a Stico in there? Now, I obviously, like, rate both of those guys,
Of course.
for different reasons. But honestly, you have to say, like, this was the right call. Like, whoever decided to assemble this lineup knows something about the game. I don't know who the fuck it was. But like you can't say they're missing anyone right now.
No, this is a great job of recruiting.
Yeah, definitely. So
they did all the right gambles, basically.
Yeah, and how often do you see your fucking team owner do that? I mean, we're just talking, again, compare and contrast. We're talking about Ocelot taking gambles on Jax and Lucky and guys like this. And, that gamble hasn't paid off. And then meanwhile, whoever the fuck put this team together, and again, we can't even put a name to it.
Don't know. I'd like to know, to be fair, because again, the odds that they looked into all of this as well. Because that's the other thing is, that's why actually this is one of those teams I'd love to know, like, the chronological order of how it all happened. Because the other thing is as well, if you actually picked these players and you were already negotiating with Carrigan that he was going to join, you're actually a legit fucking bona fide GM, mate. You know what you're doing in this game.
Yeah. For sure. Again, imagine a world where teams like in CSGO actually made like sick documentary content and like,
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, what a missed opportunity. I feel every time when a team emerges with a super cool story, shouldn't be people like me and you going out and telling it. Like,
of course,
you're the ones with the fucking cameras. Like, you're just down the hall, from these guys. Like, you can film it all and tell us all of this cool shit that we have to fucking put together by knowledge of the scene and reading between the lines. I do think we're a little bit content starved in CSGO, but that's definitely a topic for another day. So anyway, we're going to start wrapping up the podcast now. Time to get into our patron questions, because remember, obviously, we do have a patron component to this on Patreon where people donate to bring the podcast together, so we can justify doing it, as well as in addition to the sponsorship and everything else. So your boy Butt Pounder 420 comes in and asks, out of all the top teams in the history of CSGO, which one was your least favorite to watch? Now, I don't know if they qualify as a top team, but I have an answer that just immediately leaps out.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll think of one while you do it.
Flip side. Watching the old Blade flip side was the death of the soul. Absolutely, I'll never forget the MLG Columbus qualifiers where they had that ridiculous game with the Mouse Sports team with like fucking Dennis.
No, it was actually at the major. It was MLG Columbus.
Yeah, sorry, it was Columbus. It was in the group stage on the first day. So that unbelievable game. Yeah, which fucked up the whole first day because it had like 4 or 5 fucking overtimes, and the quality of CS in that game was absolutely terrible. And Flipside were doing this like tactical fucking approach where it was like, right guys, it's 20 seconds in the round, let's do our execute now. No one's pushed. It was like watching a fucking Mexican standoff where, like, just every time, like, round after round after round after round, terrible aim from players who, like, it's great doing an execute if then you go in and you explode onto a site, but then what happens is I'm watching a fucking aim duel between fucking Spiddy and fucking Shara, whatever the fuck he was called, and it's like that scene from Pulp Fiction, where the fucking where the fucking bullets are just in a fucking outline around him. Just absolute fucking nightmare. So I absolutely hated watching Flipside because not only were they shit, but they were so slow to deliver up the morsel of the round, the good bits. Because obviously, there's a pathology to a round, right? You have the buy time, and then you go in and people get set up and you go to the default positions, and then you have the picks and the pushes and the feeling each other out, and then maybe you have an execute, maybe you have a fake, the tactic, the playbook, and then you have to reverse it and double it up. So the way rounds break down can be super interesting when you watch high-level teams do it. Whenever you watch this Flipside team do it, it was just fucking pure death of the soul. It was just like, how the same shit every time. Let's use every second of every round. It's like playing fucking Germans in MR12 back with 3-minute round time back in like 2005. Watching Flipside was so shit. And glad they're gone. Like, honestly, glad they're gone. Please, like, never let there never be another team as bad as them ever again.
That's a good pull. I mean, again, as you say, it depends how far you want to let him stretch the top team part. But I definitely agree, because Flipside is a perfect example of what I was actually talking about in a past episode, where I was like, yeah, there's a part of you as a fan can watch the game and enjoy exciting games. There's a part of you, the analyst, tries to go, how good is the Counter-Strike? The point of Flipside was I would watch them as a team, and yeah, in terms of enjoyment, almost none. It was absolutely dire. But you just look at them, and then the conscious part of your brain where you're analysing the game goes, great achievement. How did he do it? But then it's like, I don't want to know. I don't want to see any more of that. I agree. They were a nightmare, because they just were the catalyst for shit games.
And always got to the major as well. I mean, understand that.
Oh, and they'd also fuck someone else's tournament as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like they would qualify at the expense of a much more exciting team to watch. Maybe not a better team. I'm not saying that, but a fucking better team to watch. And they would knock them out, get to the major, and then, all right, we made our stick of money now. Let's play slow dog shit Counter-Strike. Brilliant. Yeah, loving every second of this. Give me more of that Flipside goodness, thanks. And then just out immediately in the first round. Like, so yeah, so fuck them. Terrible. You got one?
Yeah, I've got one. So here's the thing, right? I'm gonna try and make it. It's not gonna be spot on. It's not gonna be all the best teams in the world, but I'm gonna make it more towards the end of top teams, because like, everyone knows the ones I hate out of the other teams, like Space Soldiers. I thought they were just a waste of fucking time. Again, all they were there to do was they were the bird that goes in the engine that takes down the actual plane, but they're not a plane, they're just a fucking bird. So they would shit all over everything after that. So then the one I would actually pick would be the first iteration of the Immortals lineups. It's not the one with KNG that got to the final of the major. This was the team that was like Phelps and Bolts and Steele. And what was Steele on that one? Yeah, I think he was. I think I'm trying. Maybe he was on the one after. Maybe the one with Henny and Lucas one, right?
Yeah.
That team already had the talent to be really good. They had a bunch of good. Every player was good in it, actually, except the Showtime guy. And the problem they had was they were the opposite example of that. If I just watched them and I turned my brain off completely, then yeah, I could be like, oh, well, look at that crazy shot Henny just hit, man, his reaction. But the problem is, if I in any way engaged my brain, they were incredibly frustrating to watch. Like, it was totally justified that team never made it to any of the majors, because they literally were one of those teams that didn't deserve to, essentially, because like the way they played almost like limited their chances for success. Like, they didn't have a coherent style. They didn't seem like they had proper in-game leadership. The players that were supposedly the good players were mad overrated. They were all over the fucking place, because again, as people now know, some of them were like, kicked out of Fallen's team, so they have zero confidence. Some of the other ones are incredibly way too cocky. And then, all the external things in the team, they're all partying, they're not applying themselves. So everything combined, what I knew about the team aspect of it, I didn't find them a very satisfying team on any level, because I think they were just mad wasted potential. I think, as you saw, when they later on, some of them got their chances and got their shit together. But I hate teams like that. Those are the ones that really kill me, because even in game, you're like, how many fucking mistakes can I see in one round from these players?
Yeah, they were pretty poor. Right, the other question from Reykjavik on Steam says, with news that the CS Summit is changing from a double elimination best 3 bracket to a 2 times best of 1 group stage with 4 of the 6 advancing, is this likely to harm the enjoyment of the event, or is the event still likely to be as enjoyable for us plebs because of the fun event vibe? So again, I'll go with this, because I deliberately left it out earlier because I saw the question. So I mean, look, I think first of all, if I was guessing, I think CS Summit have maybe been not pressured, not the right word, but probably the teams have been like, can you make the format a little less grueling again, to use that word? And if you do that, we'll definitely swing by, because the trend we're seeing.
It also looks like they've made the event 1 day shorter.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a budgetary thing with the Summit. The Summit are doing very well. Tournament's been successful. They get a lot of buy-in from the top.
You seem like they have a good model, actually.
Yeah, they do
run the shit.
Totally. I mean, they basically took the Tay TV model, improved it, and here we are. Right, they're doing a great job. But I don't know if some of the teams maybe said to them, like, we've got a busy schedule, we've got all these other tournaments. Be nice to have something that's just like low key, bit more
Sure.
fun. And they acquiesced and did it because one of the reasons the Summit got a lot of fucking plaudits last time around in CSGO was because it did do a legit format that was actually better than some of the
Yes.
other tournaments out there, but did it while motherfuckers were just sitting on a sofa and,
Blast.
you know,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, okay, subtle. But yeah, you know, for them to walk that back, I kind of feel that isn't a decision they're making themselves. They feel it has to be coming from somewhere else. Now, to answer the question about whether or not it'll diminish your enjoyment, again, it totally depends. Why you watch Counter-Strike. I mean, first of all, if you want to see a legit tournament with best threes and you want to actually use this in your determination about which teams are good and which teams are bad right now and who gets ranked and points, if that's your vibe, if you're a purist, you're probably not going to have a good time, but there'll still be content to absolutely consume. I would say if you're thinking about CS Summit ever in that way, you probably shouldn't, because that's not what it's there for. And the reason the CS Summit, even with a format like this, is superior to the Blast is because of those little moments. You know, we all remember like Fallen being on a sofa and giving us all these like great and Cold Zero, giving us great insights into things that happened in the games from their perspective. And that content is solid fucking gold that you will never see unless you put the players in those environments. Now, again, if you don't enjoy that, I think you fucking don't really enjoy Counter-Strike and you don't give a fuck, because give me the opportunity to pick a pro player's brains and get like loads of anecdotes like you do in the Reflection series on your YouTube channel and basically contextualize the entire history of a game from a player's perspective. I think that's incredibly invaluable. I think seeing players from perspectives where they're relaxed and having fun and having beers and interacting with other pros, I think that adds a lot of value. So will the tournament still be enjoyable? Absolutely. Will it be enjoyable if you're a purist? Probably, absolutely not. But put it this way: if you think, well, fuck CS Summit in the same way you're saying fuck the Blast. I mean, when CS Summit runs fucking a tournament every month and there's soft exclusivity and shit going on, you know, then I'll criticize the Summit for having a shit format on top.
I mean, we've even said as much about Blast, right? If there were less events, if the format was good and they didn't do all the things we now know they are doing behind the scenes, no one would have a problem with them. I mean, I would still have a mild problem with the whole owning Astralis thing with Refresh, but that's a side topic. That wouldn't actually spoil my enjoyment of the tournament itself, would it? I even made that point on the episode when I was reckoning that if their actual format was great and the Counter-Strike was great, what's mad is the purist in me would even be going like, oh, fuck, I kind of want to see this amazing tournament, though. Why would I want to argue against it? You'd have to do that thing where you argue against your own interests, essentially. Well, that's the thing. CS Summit simultaneously manages to be a fun event, a side event, and have some good teams, and be legit, and produce extra content. So they're basically everything Blast pretended to be, just in some fucking mad wolf in sheep's clothing moment to get in there and wreck everyone else in the industry. So I would agree. The problem with this one is the format was unique to them. Basically, almost no one else did double elim except the miners, bizarrely. I don't know why that's allowed there, but not in the main tournament. But that's a side topic as usual with Valve. So it was cool that they had their own shtick with that. The one downside here as well is, obviously, CS Summits in the past were usually this type of field typically. Like, you know, there were a couple of top teams and not as many of the lesser ones. Last one was a little bit of the lesser teams, which is why I could buy your theory that in a busy schedule for this year, maybe they had to make some sort of a compromise to get teams like Team Liquid and ENCE to come, etc. But that's also the killer, because if this had been double elim, we might have seen Team Liquid and ENCE. By the way, the teams I think pretty much most people want to see play the most in a best of three. They might have played in 2 best of threes if this had been double elim. So I don't think this makes the event bad or whatever. It's not as good. It's still not a bad format. I mean, it's actually a better format than like fucking ECS finals or whatever have been in the past. So still well done to them. As we said, not really any complaints about them as a company, the way they've done things. Amazing that, isn't it, Rich? Not being hired to an event. And yeah, I'm not just lying about them. Oh, wait, I don't lie. Wait.
I'll go one further. I'll go one further here. Me and Hotbid, who's obviously a huge part of the Summit, have had very contentious relationships down the years, very on and off.
Yeah.
So to put it in context, I mean, you know, I was like going through some old, I was going through the old hard drive, the old Deadman switch the other day, like just to amuse myself with some of the old shit, right? And I found like a chat log from way back with me and Hotbid fucking arguing because like they'd basically fucking Team Liquid, which Hotbid used to be a representative of, had basically told a bunch of lies about me. One of the first probably they told, and I'd put me on a blacklist. I wasn't able to interview any Team Liquid players. I totally forgot I'd been blacklisted by Team Liquid.
This is in the
one point
StarCraft
my
2
career.
days for everyone, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. This
Yes.
is like 2010 or 2011 or whatever. And me and Hotbit were having a very vitriolic back and forth. Then on top of that, he did the Esports Express stuff, where he was the head of that. Where
Yep, not a fan
basically,
of that.
yeah, basically every time instead of doing actual biting satire about things that were going on in the scene, they would just basically find a way to insult actual journalists. It's like
From literal working class backgrounds who had grinded their way on minimum wage salaries to make it an esports and just do things like funny articles like "Here's a lie" that they never said with nothing. By the way,
they compared me to that Brian Williams guy in one of their articles.
They literally put a quote from me with my given birth name of saying basically a racist comment. It was unbelievable. Like, if I'd have known back then, by the way, you're lucky I didn't know this back then. I would have sued you back then. Like, if I'd have known what I know now, I would have sued for that. But I didn't know at the time, unfortunately. Because that's the other thing about that site, as a very quick aside, is half the joke was they never said it was satire. That should be explicitly on the site somewhere.
Yeah.
That's not funny that someone could, like, fucking Google one day and find that.
In your case,
crazy. Because remember it, because it's called Esports Express. People are going to think that's a news website.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, that did happen. That's what's mad.
That did happen. Yeah, no, I remember.
Dude, I remember that went on the League of Legends sub, and people thought that was real. That's the real comment I made.
Yeah, I know. It was unreal.
Mad. So anyway, as you can see, I have more reasons to fucking hate these guys than blast if anything. But point is, their tournament is legit, and also it'll still be a cool tournament, and it's just a side thing, so there's not really anything to hate. Probably still be a pretty good event.
But there was a period where they I think they like a few people were asking if I was going to go to like the first CSGO CS Summit, because obviously I was living out in the States. It's like not far, and I think me and Hotbit had a talk, and he was just like, obviously with all of the Dota drama that I've been involved in down the years, Dota's their bread and butter, so it wouldn't necessarily be like a good call for them to have me involved. But he explained it very professionally and very politely, despite all of our differences and arguments that we've had. And then I think for either this one or the one before, he actually invited me and said, like, fuck all that noise. Do you want to come? And obviously I'm at a point now where I just don't go to events where avoidable because of all the death threats and shit. So, but I thought it was really cool of him to put differences and politics aside for the sake of a good broadcast. Go figure, right? So I've got a lot of totally respect that. Got a lot of respect for them, and I hope CS Summit continues to be a big success. So anyway, there we are. That's that is the show. So we will thank Rivalry.com once more and remind you all, if you want to make some predictions for the CS Summit, the tournament we were just talking about, and some other tournaments besides, go over to Rivalry.com, create an account, and you can enter something called Thunderdome. It's not betting. You don't need to put any money in. It's completely free to enter. You just pick the result. It's like an accumulator. You get the right amount right, you get $500 free money. All you have to do is sign up and enter it. And of course, if you are a betting type person, right now, one of the things they're doing on the site is if you want to make a $25 bet on the result of a game, you put $25 in. And if your bet's fucked up, you're done fucked up, and you made a Richie Lewis type prediction, don't worry, you get your $25 back. So lots of good reasons to go over and sign up with Rivalry and support them, because they support me and they support my channel. Anyway, obviously the other people who support us are the patrons. So shout out to our $100 patrons. Jerky's Mini and Detlef Insomniac, Rekovic on Steam, Mikhail Alex Ragnarsson, and of course Butt Pounder 420. And our $50 patrons, Marcus Kyumpar, TC Owens, Sard Sawar, Watch Doge, Carve, Madsen, Colin Penny, and Benakagi Assassin. That's been By the Numbers. So we'll be back next week talking about all the CS news and the stories that we missed this week with all of the drama and stuff. And until then, take care of yourselves.